Ko Jin-hong was one of the best experts on ancient writings in Demayan, and his 7-year-old son Jin-yong. Every day I went to the library to deal with stinky books. The little boy did not like his work at all. He was constantly watching his father. For him, playing with his dad was something he could never have dreamed of. He didn't dare to disturb his work, so he always went about his own little business. And when there was time to sit together drinking alcohol, the father would talk about his mother, looking at his son in confusion. Jin-young liked it very much, even though his father smelled of alcohol, and he lay on his lap and enjoyed his stories. Hugging his son, Ko Jin-hong asked if he missed his mother, and little Jin-young said with a smile that he was fine, and all because he has such a wonderful father who hugged his son even harder in return. Jin-young said that many children in the neighborhood lost their fathers during the great battles, so he was very happy to be with him. The next day, someone knocked hard on the gate of their house, so Jin-young decided to check who was visiting. His Uncle Chon stood on the doorstep and greeted him and asked how his little nephew was doing. Uncle Jong asked if he had read the book, and Jin-young replied that of course he had, and he also kindly asked if his aunt was doing well. Uncle Jong rubbed his beard and thought about what he should say to a 7-year-old boy when he asks him such a question. Jin-young asked if in the old days they didn't marry at the age of 7. Uncle Chon caught his nephew scratching his head and said that he was a very funny kid and he wished his son was a little bit like him. Time passed very quickly and a starry night fell outside. After setting the table and pouring a drink, Ko Jin-hong handed the mug to his brother. The conversation began with Ko Jin-hong asking if his brother really wanted him to decipher the ancient writings on the gold plates. Jong said that he was, because in fact there is no one more talented than him among all the scientists, and this is a great opportunity because the emperor is very interested in it. Ko Jin-ho said that at the moment he has not yet finished researching the relics, which he has been doing for more than 10 years. Jong assured him that his friend had only 3 gold plates and that he could solve the case in a few Sundays. The study of antiquities is important, but for so many decades he has been wasting his time. Chon knows that he has run out of money and is in debt. Jong insisted on thinking about his son's future and asked him to forget about his relics for a while and start studying the gold plates. Under the pressure of his brother, Ko Jin-hyun finally agreed to take the job, while little Jin-young eavesdropped on their conversation. The next morning, the father got ready to leave and told his son to obey the nanny because he did not know how long he would be away, but he thought it would not be long. Jin-young made fists to show his strength and begged his father not to worry about him because he was an adult. Ko Jin-hong agreed with his son, assuring him that he would return soon. Every evening, little Jin-young sat on the steps in front of the house waiting for his father. He was looking for familiar features in the people walking on the square, but did not find them. On his way back to the house, he realized that his father would not return today either. The door to his father's office attracted the attention of the upset Jin-young. His father had always forbidden him to go there, and since he was not at home, the little boy decided to look into the office. There were large shelves with an incredible number of different books. Looking around, Jin-young saw a painting hanging on the wall. If he remembered correctly, there was a secret passage behind it to his father's vault. Jin-young lit a candle and decided to go down the stairs and look around at everything he had been interested in so far. The little boy hesitantly opened the door to the vault itself. However, when he entered the secret room, he screamed in surprise. For him, it seemed incredible because there were so many beautiful and strange things stored there. Jin-young noticed that there were not only objects of their culture but also Western values and things that impressed him. Looking around, he noticed a box that his father had been working on studying all his life. The little boy became very curious about such important and complex things. That box contained various books with strange inscriptions, a strange compass, and a staff. Jin-young thought that was all there was to it, but something else caught his attention. The object looked like an octagonal stone with a scary image of an ancient demon. The little boy thought that the face was too scary, so he decided to put everything back in its place. But when he was closing the chest, he accidentally cut his finger. His finger was injured quite seriously, so blood was flowing down his finger and falling to the floor. It so happened that a drop of his blood fell on the same octagonal object with a terrible demonic image. Suddenly, something strange began to happen to him, and the eyes of the drawn demon glowed with green light as if waking up from a long sleep. Jin-young noticed this and was seriously frightened because it was something unrealistic for his little world. The octagonal object with eyes began to emit a magical blue light from its scary eyes. This light approached Jin-young's eyes, penetrating directly into his head and lifting his small body into the air. The octagon darkened with the release of its full force, and little Jin-young fell to the floor unconscious. After a while, evening was approaching quite rapidly outside. When Jin-young woke up, he tried to understand what had happened to him. He quickly closed the box and realized that he had to get out of there immediately. But suddenly he heard an incredibly eerie sound, as if someone was howling and laughing at the same time. Looking around and not noticing anyone, he closed his little ears and ran away from the shelter in fear. Jin-young tried to run away, but the alien presence caught up with him, as if enveloping him in its dark arms. He felt like he was holding his own head, so he tried to prevent it somehow, and a strange voice ordered him to obey. Jin Young tried to drive out the evil spirit forever, so that evil would not subdue him. The little boy was so enraged by the inner struggle that he ordered the spirit to get out of his head, thus suddenly releasing a lot of inner energy. When Jin Young regained consciousness, he hurried to leave the shelter where he had recently experienced some strange things. A voice in his head screamed that he would not be able to escape from it no matter how hard he tried. Jin Young walked up the stairs and sticky shadows caught on his small body, making his every step difficult, as if pulling him back. Each new step required incredible effort, and he knew that if he submitted, he would fall into the hands of the dark forces irrevocably and forever. He ordered himself to gather all his salt and strength because he could not afford to lose so easily. But suddenly he realized that if he did not lose his common sense, he could win this fight, and the darkness began to recede. In the darkness, there were only demonic eyes burning with green light, wondering how it had happened. After all, he inhabited a human baby and thought that he would immediately take possession of its body and soul. But he didn't succeed. Apparently his father did it when he sealed it, so he will have to find another way, even if it takes a long time. Jin Young was lying in his bed, unable to sleep, thinking about the recent events that had happened to him. The little boy never heard that strange voice again, so he hoped that it had disappeared forever. But as soon as he thought about it, the voice said that he hadn't disappeared and asked him his name. The voice said that Jin Young was the one who woke Certain up and ordered the boy to say his name. Still frightened, Jin Young could not understand who and where he was and why he was talking to him, so he simply replied that he did not want to. A little boy in the corner of his room saw the same green eyes that had been watching his every move. Sertan looked up from the darkness and asked if the boy's name was really Nechuja. Jin Young sat on the steps outside his house, sad and alone. The nanny came to him and said that he was very pale. Maybe he had a bad pain somewhere, she was worried. The little boy told her that nothing special was happening to him and that he would just have to rest for it to go away. The nanny understood and reminded him that today he shouldn't read too many books and should rest more. The nanny left, and Jin Young was upset that if he told anyone about it, they would think he was a real lunatic. While he was thinking, Certain turned to him and asked what kind of place this was, because the air here was completely different. He wondered if there were no spirits in this place at all, but Jin Young ignored him. Certain referred to him as "I don't want," which made the little boy very angry, and he asked him not to call him that and to shut up forever. But the voice continued to mock his name. Jin Young jumped up from his seat and shouted at him that he was Cherutan. But the spirit did not like this, and emphasized that his name was not Cherutan but Certain, the great warrior, Makaya Certain. Jin Young clenched his fists and told him not to make him laugh if he didn't want to, and that from now on he would call him Cherutan. But there was only silence in response, and the little boy was left alone again. It's time to eat. The nanny has prepared a lot of different food and wished her little master a good meal. Jin Young kindly thanked the nanny for the meal, to which she only smiled pleasantly. While eating dinner, the little boy was thinking about his father and suddenly remembered that he had not heard from Cherutan for a long time, and that he might have already left him. But suddenly Cherutan raised his voice and asked how Jin Young knew. The confused boy looked around and could not understand what he was talking about. He asked how he knew about the nickname he was called in Macau, and the boy said it was just a mispronunciation of his name. Jin Young was now very curious about the meaning of this Makai. Cherutan explained that Makai is located between the celestial world and the world of people, because a zone was needed for the conflict between the two worlds. Jin Young listened intently and asked if Makai and the heavenly world were created by humans to fight great battles. Cherutan said that he understood everything correctly and praised that Nechuja was very smart. Jin Young asked how he could believe Cherutan's words, and the boy reminded him that that was not his name, and he said that it was not his name either. But suddenly Jin Young laughed out loud. Cherutan asked him why he was laughing so hard. He explained that if you write Cherutan in Chinese characters, it will make at least some sense. Cherutan asked what the meaning of his name was, and Jin Young laughed even harder and said that Cherutan was a crying singer. Cherutan was silent for a while and then asked how I don't want to do that. Jin Young didn't understand what he was getting at, but Cherutan was curious how he knew about his abilities, because he can control the mind of the enemy with his voice, making them cry and fall into nightmares. But Jin Young was not afraid of him, saying that he did not know why, so he went to bed and ordered Cherutan to sit quietly. When the little boy had long fallen asleep, Cherutan looked at him and thought he was a funny little boy, curious and quick to think. He caught himself thinking that this was the first time he had shown empathy, so he considered it a foolish mercy to this human being. He told him to wait for the time when his body would become Cherutan's property, because he had to return to Makai by any means necessary. The next morning, Yung Yong decided to sort things out. He reflected on the fact that demons usually live for 5,000 years, and Cherutan lived for 1,000 years by human standards, from 50 years to 10 years. In this case, if his calculations are correct, Cherutan is 10 years old, which means that they are definitely friends of 1 year. While Jin Young was doing his calculations, He was told that his father had finally returned home. Taking off his hat, Ko Jin-hong greeted everyone and asked if anything interesting had happened in his absence. Jin Young was overjoyed to see his father, but he just stood silently across from him, smiling. After all, if he talks about Cheritan, his father will find out that Jin Young secretly broke into his hideout. So he hid his hands behind his back and said that nothing strange happened at all. The father was happy to hear this and asked if his son had been studying his letters conscientiously. Ko Jin-hyun told his son that he had something very urgent to do, so he had to hurry. Cheriton asked Neho what it was and why his father was not nice to him, and Jin Young ordered him to shut up. Ko Jin-hyun stood in front of the painting that hid the hiding place and realized that he was running out of time. He went into his hiding place and looked around. Everything was just as he had left it. So he approached the table thinking that most likely after working on the slabs in the palace, the emperor would take his life. But before that happens, he has to write down everything, no matter what happens to him. Meanwhile, something was happening in the luxurious imperial palace. The emperor's servant humbly asked him if he had called for him when he entered the bathhouse. The emperor asked if it was true that Ko Jin-hong had gone back home. The servant replied that this was true because he had the materials needed for the job in his house, so he had been given special approval. The emperor was worried that the contents of secret research might come to light. The servant assured the emperor that he had no reason to worry because it had been less than 10 days since he had begun the experiment. How many scientists have abandoned this work in such a long time? He is not yet revealed. But the emperor was not reassured by the words of his servant, so he shouted at him to be fully prepared in any case. After all, when Ko Jin-hyun returns, his family and those associated with him were ordered to deal with everyone. The next day, Ko Jin-hong packed his things and got ready to go. But he suddenly turned to his son and thought that maybe this time he would devote 1 month to research. He said that they say that no news is good news, so they should not worry about him. His father ordered Jin Young to obey the nanny and then set off on his way. But when he went outside the gates of his house, he noticed that the imperial soldiers were standing around him. He was approached by Yuk Du-gam from Jinwei, who said that they had come to accompany him. Jin Young wondered why government troops would accompany his father. Before setting out on his journey, his father reminded Jin Young not to neglect his studies. He gave him 9 books on Hancha a year ago, and he probably read them all, but now he needs to repeat the 3rd volume. Jin Young did not understand what his father was getting at and why he should pay attention to the 3rd volume. His father emphasized that it was the 3rd volume because when he returned home, he would definitely give him an exam. The soldier who accompanied him said that Ko Jin-hong's son was a genius for reading Hancha at that age, but his father remained silent. What did his father even mean by that? Since Jin Young had graduated from Hancha 2 years ago and didn't understand why he needed to read again. Days gave way to nights and rain to sunny days. Jin Young sat on the steps of the house and waited for his father to come home again. He was about to go back inside, but something caught his attention. Imperial soldiers still stood outside the house in any weather, regardless of whether it was day or night. The little boy did not understand why they were standing there, but he never ceased to be amazed. Cheriton asked Naewant why he was thinking so much and asked what had happened to him. Jin Young decided to ask Cheriton why those soldiers were standing outside the house as if they were watching. Cheriton replied that it seems they came when his father came, and he has long felt the energy of those warriors. Jin Young was outraged that Cheriton knew everything and didn't tell him, but he said he didn't think it would be strange for him. But suddenly an enlightenment came to his little head, and he realized what his father meant. He rushed to his office to read the 3rd volume immediately. Perhaps his father left him some secret sign. The search took a little time, but the books of the 3rd volume were not among them. Jin Young searched the entire shelf from top to bottom, but he couldn't find the book he was looking for, and he wondered where it might have gone from the shelf. Cheriton called him, and the little boy said that he was very busy right now. Cheriton apologized and said that he had been watching him for some time and noticed that there was one place he had not yet searched. Jin Young followed the spirit's advice and went to the secret hiding place to see if Cheriton's guess was correct. When he remembered that it was in this very place that Cheriton had stuck to him, he felt uncomfortable. He went into the relic storage room and looked around for a book. His attention was drawn to his father's desk with letters and a book on it. Jin Young picked up the book and looked at it closely to make sure that it had been on the table all along. Cheriton asked what those strange inscriptions on the table were and what those words meant. Jin Young looked at the leaves and wondered what they could be, but he couldn't figure it out. Cheriton suggested looking at the 3rd volume. The little boy opened the book and saw that his father had written something on a folded page. He turned the book in different directions, trying to understand the writing. Because the order was out of whack, the right and left hieroglyphs were moved if you read it backwards. Jin Young managed to read some words and did nothing. Cheriton asked why he was just standing there, what he was up to. The little boy said that he seemed to have solved the riddle and Cheriton was curious what it was, but he said that he would see for himself later. Jin Young noticed the statues he had passed earlier and stopped by them. Looking at these animals, he remembered his mother, who was born near the sea and loved turtles. For some reason, he He also mentioned that his left hand is stronger than his right, and only he and his father know about it. Jin Yong set to work, touching the turtle. He turned the statue to the left 3 times. It was not easy for him, but he succeeded. Another secret room opened up in front of him. Jin Young was very surprised because he didn't expect to open another room. He thought he would find some small storage, but it exceeded his expectations. On the walls of the secret room hung many records of his father's experiments. And on Jin Young's desk, he noticed a whole stack of documents. The little boy picked up the documents to examine them and discovered that they were secret letters from his father to him. They say that it was a mistake to come to the Imperial Palace because they think it will take a long time to decipher the gold plates. But Jin Young was more impressed by the fact that his father wrote that he had solved them long ago. However, it will be very dangerous to transmit their content, and this cannot be allowed. Jin Young and Cheritan looked at the letters with some strange letters on them. Cheritan noticed that this was a rather interesting thing, but the spirit was unsure, but said that these were not letters but runes. The little boy wondered what those runes were, and the spirit told him that runes were somehow magical formulas. He also wondered what magic was, and Cheritan began to explain that magic uses mana to change the air and nature. It is quite possible to divide the sea into 2 parts by magic and walk on the seabed without getting your feet wet. Magic can cause lightning to strike one place or, in some cases, a specific person. Magic can be used to fly in the sky on a broomstick. Magic is also the origin of various nature spirits, such as cute little fairies. Magic helps to turn into a rat or use magical spirits of nature as servants. Jin Young quickly realized that Cheritan knew how to use magic, so he asked him to teach him a little bit. Meanwhile, Uncle Jong was in a great hurry on his horse. He was thinking that he had to ride as fast as he could because he had to save little Jin Young. According to the text, besides the moon where they live, there are many others, and the person who wrote it came from another world. It was Jenna the mage who tried to return to his world, but he failed. The heavens were jealous of his abilities, so the magician could not return. He spent the rest of his life away from people in a mountain cave. However, he thought it was all because of the curse of an object he had accidentally received. After all, the object was endowed with enormous power enough to change the magic Jenna created to return. It was essentially a demonic thing that could do great evil. In his letters, Ko Jin Hong addressed Jin Yong because he would inherit his father's research. He should handle such things with the utmost care because it can endanger his life. Jin Yong was upset because if he had known this before he touched the object, it would have been better. In any case, there was a magician from the other world who came here earlier, and Cheritan laughed and said that the magician could not return because of him. Jin Young mentioned those strange Noni letters, and Cheritan corrected him that they were not Noni, but runes. The little boy recalled that Cheritan had once said that he had transferred people's language from his head to his own. Jin Young wanted the spirit to transfer these runes to his head, but he didn't like the idea. Of course, Cheritan could have done it, but he wondered why he needed to. Jin Young said that they are 2 minds in common, so they can't possibly know the same information for 2 people. The spirit said that he was a great warrior, Makai, and that he could not really do anything. The provocation worked, so Cheritan agreed to help, but warned him that his head would hurt as if it were being torn into small pieces. It was just like Cheritan said. He said that did the little boy think that learning languages was so easy? It takes a lot of time and effort to fully understand. But while he was saying all this, Jin Young was able to read everything that was written on the paper. Cheritan thought that this kid was really no ordinary child. Jin Young leaned over the notes and said that he had memorized all the words on the wall. The little boy also asked the spirit to teach him magic. Cheritan exhaled and said that he had already told him that this was unrealistic because it was forbidden by law in Macau. Without losing hope, Jin Young asked if the spirit could teach him at least some basic magic, since they were not Makai now. Cheritan agreed to teach the little boy, and he jumped for joy. However, Cheritan warned that he was not familiar with human magic. Jin Young said that he was a powerful warrior, so what could he do? The spirit will teach the little boy one magic that is often used in Makai. It is a finger fantasy magic that is controlled by the finger as a martial art using the finger, so if it has a lot of magic, it can do incredible things. For example, you can cut through space, but you have to be careful of this spell. If you use it incorrectly, not only mana but also vital energy will leave your fingertips. You can lose your life in this way, so if possible, you should use this spell only once a day. But their conversation was interrupted by a worried voice looking for little Jin Young everywhere. Jin Young recognized the voice because it belonged to his Uncle John. He ran out of the secret room as fast as he could to avoid being found out. A little boy notices that the turtle statue rises to the top and the door closes by itself. Uncle John and Nanny were very concerned and rushed to find Jin Young. Surprised, he came out of his secret place and wondered why the 2 of them were so worried and wondered what had happened. The nanny started crying, and Uncle Chan took the boy by the shoulders and told him that something was wrong. Ko Jin Hong was arrested in the Imperial Palace, and these words knocked the ground out from under the little boy's feet. Uncle Chong said he didn't know, but his father falsely deciphered the meaning of the golden plates. saying that the emperor was angry. He took Jin Yong's hand and said that in any case, he could not stay here. He had to leave as soon as possible and at least save his son. Jin Yong asked if his uncle was telling him to run away from home. Uncle Jong explained that if you offend the imperial family, all relatives will be eliminated. Perhaps the soldiers would come to take the boy away, so they had to flee immediately, so they hurried to the back gate. Uncle Jong opened the door and a spear immediately appeared, wounding his arm. The nanny and Jin Yong ran to him to check if he was okay, and his uncle said that he was fine. He just scratched his arm. Yukdu Gam said that no one would be able to leave this house. Uncle Jong realized that things were very bad. Jin Young was furious and shouted at the soldiers how they dared to injure his Uncle Jong. Because of the recent events and news, his nerves were on edge, and Jin Young put his finger forward and prepared to cast the spell. But he was interrupted by his Uncle Jong, who addressed Yukdu Gam. Holding his wound, he said that he was a candidate for the cabinet of ministers of Jongsang-hyun, and they dared to wound him. Almost shouting, he asked if they really thought they would not be punished for this. Yukdu Gam's face changed, as did his soldiers, and he began to make excuses that they did not mean to hurt him on purpose. Jong Song-hyun came here today because this is his friend's house. He ordered the head of the guard to immediately retreat and let them go, but Yukdu Gam said that he could not fulfill his order because he was from Jin Wei. Therefore, he follows the orders of the imperial family. Even if Jong is from the cabinet, he has no right to order him to retreat. Uncle Chong said that there was no one else here except the little boy and his nanny, so there was no one else to take from this house. Yukdugam replied seriously that he had received an order to arrest the criminal's son, Ko Jin Hong. Uncle Jong was outraged by the emperor's order because the little boy was not even 8 years old. No matter how cruel this world is, can they really take an 8-year-old child and execute him? Yukdugam explained that he was only authorized to carry out the orders of the imperial family. He warned that if he tried to interfere with this process, they would have no choice but to arrest him as well. Jin Young, watching their dialogue, interjected himself into the conversation. Turning to Uncle Jong and asking him not to worry, he would obediently follow the head of the guard. He was quite sure that those people would not be able to do anything to him. Jin Young asked if he should know why they were taking him away and if they should let him meet his father. Yukdu Gam admired the little boy's courage and agreed to his terms, saying that his father was in prison under his supervision. But his expression changed abruptly to a serious one, and he warned Jin Young that he would only allow them to meet once. Uncle Chong leaned over to his nephew and said that whatever the situation, it was very serious and dangerous. Jin Young replied that although he was young, he was the first son of the house. A father would not want his son to run away either, so don't worry. Nothing bad will happen to him. Yukdu Gam said that the criminal's guilt has not yet been proven, so we need to wait a little bit, but it is still a better option than being on the run all your life. Nevertheless, Jin Young went to Jinwei prison where his father was in prison. The little boy obediently followed Yukdu Gam and thought about what he was doing. More than half of the people who come here are left without life, and even if someone survives, they lose their minds. So this place is called Hell on Earth. Yukdu Gam opened the door to one of the cells for him and told him that his father was inside. Jin Young ran inside with tears in his eyes and stopped halfway through, his eyes bawling. His father hung with his head down, shackled to the prison wall. Jin Young shouted for his father to wake up, and when the father opened his eyes, he was very surprised because he did not expect to see his son here. Jin Young was happy that his father was okay and wanted to run up and hug him, but the head of the guard ordered him not to come close to him. Ko Jin Hong was worried about his son, so he said that children had no place here. Jin Young burst into tears because he missed his father so much, and then Jin Wei's soldiers came and told him that his father was a criminal. Ko Jin Hong was angry with the head of the guard, asking why they took his son away, since he was not guilty of anything. Yukdu Gam explained that he was following orders, but as he knew, if he offended the imperial family, all relatives would be killed along with the offender. Ko Jin Hong understood everything and asked him not to transfer his guilt to his young son. Little Jin Young couldn't take the strain either and burst into tears. Yukdugam sighed and told Ko Jin Hong that he would come to see him a little later. The head of the guard guided the sobbing Jin Young to the exit of the cell to the begging cries of his father. Ko Jin Hong asked to be killed, not his son. From the darkness, the emperor's voice was heard saying that if he pardoned his son, would he do the job properly. With tears in his eyes, Ko Jin Hong begged the emperor to at least leave his son alone. The emperor warned him to obey his orders if he promised not to cheat and how to conduct the experiment. In this case, the emperor would not take his little life. Ko Jin Hong had already deceived the emperor once, and this was his insurance policy just in case. The emperor informed him that he was sending his son into exile until the experiment was completed, to a special place of confinement on the distant island of Chonggandong. This isolated island in Shandong province is said to be difficult for prisoners to escape. But don't worry, the people on that island are very nice and friendly. Cheriton turned to Ne Want that this place is much more dangerous than he thought. While analyzing the documents, Yukdu Gam called his superiors idiots, because what did they want by sending a small child into exile? One of the soldiers asked if the boy was too young to be sent here as a toy. Yukdu Gum ordered him to shut up and put Jin Young in the same room as old man Gu Yang. The soldiers accompanied the little boy strictly by order of the head of the guard. On the way, Jin Young saw prisoners who were constantly doing something, carrying cargo or carrying tools, under constant supervision by soldiers. The prisoners looked at the child and said to each other that the world had come to an end, since they were already sending children away. Jin Young was brought to the main square by the collar as if he were a kitten and introduced as a new prisoner. The boy's name was Ko Jin Young, who is currently 8 years old. He was still a young man, so he would run small errands until he turned 10. A large, hairy man scratched his beard and said that they should definitely take care of the kid. Another prisoner pushed him, joking about what Volakatik would do if the child was afraid of him and started to be capricious. Volakatik laughed and said that in that case he would strip him naked. Jin Young and Cherutan simultaneously thought that there was not a single sane person on this island. Jin Young was still hanging in the air in front of the crowd of prisoners who looked at him as if he were a new toy, while he thought about his father. He was going to have a hard time in the new place, and now, like everyone else, he was sleeping on the cold floor instead of a warm bed. Suddenly waking up, he realized that he had lost consciousness immediately after entering the dungeon. Cherutan wondered what they were going to do now, and Jin Young said that he needed to be patient for a few days and think about it. But he was pushed out of his thoughts by a sudden shout that he had to get up. When breakfast time came, the cook poured food from a common cauldron for everyone in turn. Jin Young stood next to Harry, who threw his arm around his shoulder. Volakatik squeezed the little boy between the other prisoners in the line. He leaned over his ear and told him that if he ate breakfast, he would be able to work, and if he couldn't work, someone else would have to do his job. The prisoners who remained in line behind them were outraged by this insolence. Volakatik shouted to them not to stare, but to be patient for today, because this is the first and last indulgence for this child. Jin Young looked down at him and assured him that he was fine, so he didn't have to do that. Volakatik became serious, saying that he was not doing this out of mercy, so he should shut his mouth a little bit. Jin Young understood, but when he received his portion, he could not contain his emotions because it was disgusting to look at, let alone eat. Harry noticed that Jin Young was standing in line for too long, so he moved him aside because he was preventing other prisoners from getting their portion. Jin Young stared at the plate and still didn't dare to try even a spoonful. Meanwhile, Volakatik was finishing his portion of the food he liked, and he said that if the kid was not going to eat, he should give the plate to someone else. There are many people who don't even eat, and the prisoners sat on the stones and ate their food. Harry said that if such a little asshole got here, it meant that his family had committed some kind of grave betrayal. But Jin Young hardly listened to him, thinking that even though his family was not particularly rich, they never allowed themselves to eat such scraps. However, he realized that he was no longer at home, and Volakatik's words were hitting his little heart directly. Gathering his will into a fist, Jin Young told Harry that he could eat every last spoonful. He decided for himself that he would endure all the trials until he got out of this terrible place. He would eat anything to survive, so he began to devour everything on the plate with great motivation. On the same day, he had a lot of work to do. Everyone needed him, and he was ordered to serve or bring something to everyone. If he sat down for a minute or looked at something he was interested in, they would immediately yell at him for being idle. By lunchtime, he was already falling down from exhaustion, and some prisoners even thought he was deliberately pretending to faint. But Jin Young was a strong spirit, so he found the strength to get up and work again. The boy was often reprimanded and physically abused if he did something differently than a particular prisoner wanted. His little hands were covered with calluses and wounds that did not have time to heal. At night, he often cried because it was difficult for a young child to withstand such a lot of work and to endure forced separation from his family. But he also had some pleasant moments in his free time, practicing magic with Cherutan. Jin Young, under the guidance of the spirit, made incredible progress in this matter. Cherutan was very happy that his don't want was making such progress at this rate. He would soon fully master magic and destroy this cursed place. The spirit told him that in order to collect mana, the natural energy must be strong, but the energy of this place was not good. Cherutan knew that he had to solve this problem urgently, while little Jin Young was sleeping sweetly on the floor of the dungeon. But suddenly, someone else's hands touched his legs as if to knead them. Jin Young decided to first discreetly spy on who was doing what to him. It was the elderly Gu Yan who quietly was massaging the young boy's legs. Jin Young jumped up in fright and asked what his grandfather was doing to him, but old Gu Yan silently continued to massage him, paying no attention to him. Jin Young noticed that all the heaviness of his body after work was gone, so he asked Cherutan if he knew what was going on. He knew, but he didn't tell me because he knew it was good for him. And with his personality, he would obviously refuse to have the old man give him massages all night. Jin Young understood, so he bowed to old Gu Yan and thanked him for his help, and asked him how he was feeling. Jin Young told him that he was a little tired, but he was fine, and that his care made it even better. Old Gu Yan was curious, So he asked how it happened that the child ended up in such a place. Jin Yong was surprised that after all this time he hadn't learned the details of his stay on the island, so he just said that he had been sent here. The old man thought about the fact that if you offend the imperial family, all relatives are killed. But for some reason, the son of the criminal was sent here instead of being executed. This child was given a chance at life for a reason, and Gu Yak told Jin Yong that he had been watching him all along and found him to be an incredible child, but he was not. He felt a strange energy flowing in his body, and the old man wondered if the boy had ever studied martial arts in his life. Jin Young felt uncomfortable that someone besides him felt the presence of Cheritan's energy. Jin Young lowered his head and said that he had never studied any martial arts because he grew up in a family of scientists. However, he recalled that he knew a technique that his father had once taught him. Guyan realized what technique he was talking about. It was the abdominal breathing technique. It was hardly a martial art, but a good way to cleanse the mind and body. Guyan said that it is a useful skill, but like other skills, one should be careful not to overdo it. The old man tells Jin Young that from now on he is considered his assistant. His body is still weak, and he won't last a year with it, so he needs to train it. Jin Young was grateful to him, but worried whether the soldiers would allow it. Guyan assured him that he would tell them personally, so he didn't have to worry about it. The old man warned Jin Young that he had nothing to be thankful for, because he was doing it because he needed him. The next day, Jin Yong was already helping Guyan with his work. While working, the old man noticed that his tool was completely worn out. Guyan asked his assistant to bring a new one, which he gladly agreed to. After Jin Yong became old Gu Yang's apprentice, no one else bothered him. The influence of his grandfather on this island was quite large, and Jin Yong wondered what he was doing. In the studio, Jin Yong met Harry, who wished him good morning. He also said hello to Uncle Xing, who remarked that the kid had been doing quite well lately. They even say on the island that Jin Yong became Gu Yang's personal assistant because he was very lucky. The hairy man leaned right in front of his face and said that if it wasn't for old Gu Yan, the boy would have become his property. Then he laughed and advised Jin Young to show himself well in front of the old man because he was a very bad person. Jin Young was very curious about the kind of person Gu Yan's grandfather was and what he did. Harry told him that when a new doju arrives, the predecessor always warns him about the old Gu Yang. The position of doju is high in itself, but it is lowered in status if he holds it in Chonggongdong. And the reason for this is to please old Gu Yang. This is nothing more than his incredible sculpting skills. His statues carved by him personally were even sent to the imperial palace. But one day there was a brave man who tried to suppress the old man by force. Gu Yan is just knocking on stones, why should he be indulged? Said the brave man. But old Gu Yan did not work for 10 days in protest, which left the imperial court 3 sculptures short. Later, Doju received a letter saying that he would stay in Changdong for another 3 years. Doju was furious at this punishment, so he told the soldiers to catch old Gu Yang. The furious Doju sent a group of guards to the cell of old Gu Yang. However, it was not so easy for Gu Yan to catch the soldiers who came to him later lying at his feet. The next group of warriors attacked old Gu Yan with spears, which he skillfully and easily dodged, reducing the distance between him and the soldiers. In turn, Gu Yan began to attack with one blow, and he threw one soldier away from him. The rest of the soldiers who were watching, and who had not yet realized anything, the old man was already behind them. He picked up a spear from the ground and headed toward the soldiers, who pointed their spears at him in fear. Doju, who gave the order to catch Gu Yang with his tail between his legs, was standing behind one of the soldiers. The old man said that if they tried to capture him, they would lose most of their soldiers in vain. Doju was still hiding behind the soldier and shouting how he dared to threaten the authorities. But he must have forgotten who he was dealing with, because old Gu Yan broke the spear he was holding in a second, and he threw it right at Doju's feet as a last warning. Gu Yang ordered him to choose between becoming a prisoner or getting a promotion. In the end, Doju bowed his head and begged the old man's forgiveness, and this is the only way he could calm Gu Yan's anger. And exactly 3 years later, Doju was able to leave the island, after which no one contacted the old sculptor again, unless old Gu Yan himself wants to leave his stone mountain. Autumn came to Chonggundong Island, and little Jin Young was still on the island helping Gu Yan with his work. He often thought about his father, where he was, and what was happening to him. Gu Yan noticed that Jin Young was very upset, so he immediately realized that he was thinking about his father. Jin Young admitted that he misses him very much and is worried about him. After all, so much time has passed since their last meeting, and my father is probably still suffering in that dark and cold prison. Gu Yan looked at him seriously and said that if the thoughts of his father brought him pain and suffering, the distance between them would only increase. Jin Young listened to him carefully because he knew that the old man wanted to help him and support him to some extent. Gu Yan recommended forgetting about his father until he could take care of himself, otherwise his soul would burn first. Jin Young smiled and said he understood, and he was very grateful for the old man's attentiveness and support for him. He had one secret place where he could forget about all his troubles for a while. First of all, He wanted to get rid of bad thoughts about his father, and he did not know whether he would succeed or not. Cheritan told him that what was the point if he broke down before meeting him, and that he could not grieve forever. Jin Yong knew that Cheritan meant him no harm, so he agreed with his words. The little boy suddenly realized that he did not see any soldiers in the room. He had come to change his grandfather's hammer. He looked around and wondered where the soldier could have gone, since he could not take anything from there of his own free will. Cheritan called Jin Yong and noticed someone's footprint and asked him to go together to see who it belonged to. He still went on a reconnaissance mission, and as soon as he came around the corner, he was immediately spotted. The same soldier was standing there, and they were laughing and telling him to come over to them. Jin Yong immediately sensed that something was amiss, so he replied that he was busy and had to leave. Harry was angry and shouted that how dare a kid look down on him just because old Gu Yan was looking after him. Jin Young didn't even realize when he disrespected him. Volocodic pointed his finger at him and said that if he had obeyed him and come as he was ordered, instead of making excuses. Jin Yong could not swallow such injustice, so he started shouting and saying that he had never said such a thing. The evil Volocodic picked him up by the collar and held him in front of his face, telling him not to twitch. Jin Young ordered him to let him go, and Harry mocked him, saying that even if he didn't let him go, the kid wouldn't do anything to him. The soldier also mocked the little boy by suggesting that he pull down his pants. Volocodic asked them to wait a minute and stand up straight because that way they could get a bottle of alcohol. Jin Young was angry that he was doing such shitty things just for a drink. He could not resist, but in his case it was not necessary to use physical force, so he decided to test his strength in practice. Cheritan was surprised that his don't know was going to use magic and warned him that it could be dangerous for him as well. But he could not help but ask Cheritan to give him a sign when he had enough energy to use magic. Cheritan warned him that if he didn't let go of the energy clot now, he would regret it. Volocodic laughed and had no idea what was coming, and in Jin Yong's little hands, there was already a magical blob of energy of incredible power. Cheritan gave a sign and Jin Yong immediately sent energy directly into Harry's chest. His heart was immediately engulfed in an incredible flame, and from it the energy spread in a rapid flow throughout his body. Volocodic felt as if a flame was burning in every cell of his body. He was screaming and writhing in pain, lying on the floor as if trying to put out an unnoticed fire. Jin Young didn't expect to be endowed with such a useful magic skill, and on the other hand, he was quite frightened by his own power. Even in the evening, he was still looking at his hands and trying to realize that they had almost taken a man's life today. Old Gu Yan approached Jin Yong and asked if he was having a hard time. The little boy smiled at him and told him that he could tolerate it for now. Gu Yan thought about something for a while and finally said that he had a suggestion for him. Jin Young had never heard him make such a suggestion, so he wondered what the old man had in store for him. Gu Yan stood in front of him and asked him seriously if he wanted to start learning martial arts. Jin Young was surprised by his offer and asked who would teach him martial arts. Old Gu Yan put his hand on his chest and said that he would personally teach him everything he knew. Jin Young didn't expect that his grandfather Gu Yan knew and mastered martial arts. He thought that, after all, there are rumors on the island that he had beaten a dozen soldiers, probably the old master Muram. Gu Yan explained that he didn't need to consider him his mentor, he would just teach him. Jin Young asked if the old man wanted to teach him martial arts because he was worried about him. He thought about the fact that his grandfather's offer was attractive, but why he was doing so much for him was not like a normal act of kindness to a child. Jin Young was very curious about the reason why he was so loyal. Gu Yan emphasized that in return, he would be obliged to do one thing, and he warned the boy that it would not be easy. First, Jin Young has to get off this island, which is not an easy task. Gu Yan emphasized that if a little boy wants to learn martial arts, he will teach him the basics. The old man did not pressure him or expect an answer right away because it was not something he could easily do. He decided to give Jin Young 5 years to give him an answer. Jin Young was very surprised and even a little confused. The old man explained that it would take this long for his body and mind to mature, and only then would he be able to make the right decision. Besides, it is impossible to learn his techniques with his current body structure. Gu Yan thought that maybe even 5 years would not be enough. Jin Young thinks that if he learns martial arts, it will be much easier for him to survive on the island and save his father. After considering everything, he resolutely agreed to trust old Gu Yan. The next day, Jin Young sat on the fireplace and reflected on the latest events. But he suddenly saw Volocodic walking fast nearby and called out to him. Harry, who was trying to get away from him as quickly as possible, asked what he wanted from him, since he was in a hurry himself. Jin Young only wanted to know if his body had recovered from the recent incident. Volocodic shrugged and said he was perfectly fine. After all, for a kid like Volocodic, a child's attack is a small thing. He hit his fist on his palm and said that he had forgotten to do a very important thing. So I asked him to excuse me because he had to run on business. Volocodic turned around and waved and wished him good luck. Jin Young tried to understand what had just happened because he ran away as if he had seen a ghost. Cheritan noted that such behavior is quite typical for someone who was beaten up yesterday. Cheritan said that now he feels much calmer. In fact, if the spirit could turn back the clock, it would have burned that walking ball of hair long ago. Jin Young was amused by Cheritan's words, but they still had a lot of fun. Gu Yang appeared behind him and asked if Jin Young had already prepared. The boy smiled at him and said that he was ready for a long time. Old Gu Yan handed him a hammer and asked him to take it. After all, starting today, Jin Young will be breaking stones. Since the old man took him in, the little boy has been watching him work, so now he will do everything just like him. Jin Young asked how their work relates to the study of martial arts. Gu Yan said that everything is interconnected, so today he wants to teach Jin Young the Kondon technique. At one time, Gu Yan was a member of an organization in the Tantian spiritual temple. This technique is useful for laying the foundation and is great for creating chi flow. Also very effective in terms of physical training, he crushed the stones with his hand to prove his point. Crushing the stones is a preparatory stage, so the main thing is to be patient and not rush. The process of breathing and hammering should be in the same rhythm. Jin Young performed his work diligently under the close supervision of Gu Yang. From the day his grandfather decided to teach him martial arts during the day, he crushed stones and maintained his breathing balance. At night, after work, he would hang on the stone wall for a long time. It was all done to make his arms and fingers stronger, so even just hanging was very painful. However, it was much easier thanks to the technique of controlling internal energy and the power of the finger of imagination. 1 year later, Jin Young was making great progress and was already hanging on a stone wall with only 2 fingers. The little boy was noticeably transforming into a young man who was developing his strength and strengthening his body. Gu Yan was constantly watching him, wondering if his body had developed enough, because there might be problems with the transition to the second stage. Jin Young noticed that the old man was thinking for a long time, so he decided to ask if something was wrong. Gu Yan told him that he was fine, but that he could use a break after a hard workout. Jin Young bowed humbly and thanked him for his training. The old man watched the boy walk away, thinking that he thought 5 years would not be enough and that he was growing faster than expected. And in less than 10 years, Gu Yan would teach him everything he knew, and he wondered how a mentor feels when he has an outstanding student. But he shook his head and admitted that he could not think about it because he was slowing down its development. And all this for his personal goal, which Jin Young will definitely be able to fulfill. Meanwhile, Jin Young held out 2 fingers and concentrated on his inner energy. Thanks to his ability to use the technique of the finger of fantasy, he easily cut through the depths of stone like a blade. All that was left was stumps and a lot of dust. Cheritan noticed that his fingers were gradually getting used to it, and his magical power was also steadily increasing. Now you can go beyond the second sulcus and move to the third. Jin Young thought about it because he couldn't remember the word circle. He thinks it's better to just call it a circle at this point, and he wants to change the names of the other spells to make them easier to understand. Light is the magic of light, and fly will be called the magic of flight. Cheritan did not like this idea because it was too primitive. Jin Young stretched and said that there was nothing he could do, and he was thinking about whether he should exercise his inner energy. He chose a suitable boulder and sat on it in a meditative position. From the flow of his inner energy, his braids rose up and light surrounded his body. Suddenly, the energy around him changed to dark and malicious. Jin Young was scared at first, but quickly pulled himself together. First, he had to stop the chi energy. Cheritan asked what happened to him. Jin Young explained that he had just experienced a large amount of incredible energy in his body, and he asked if Cheritan knew what it was. Cheritan explained that most likely the power of the magical stone artifact and the energy of the seal are mixed together. Jin Young was very surprised by this explanation because he had no idea what was going on inside him. The energies have been mixing in his body for quite some time now, so Jin Young was angry with Cheritan because he should have told him about it earlier. He understood why the speed of his development increased and grew thanks to the magic stone. Cheritan asked if he thought he was a genius among geniuses. Jin Young only now realized why he was growing faster, even in spite of the island's stingy energy. They were replacing the insufficient energy. Cheritan admitted that when they arrived on the island, he thought that his limit would be the 4th lap. Taking all these factors into account, it is now possible to develop even further. Jin Young felt his inner strength, so he became very curious about how far he could go. Old Gu Yan practiced with his student and watched him unobtrusively. He noted that it had been just over 2 years, but his abilities were equivalent to 30 years of practice. Gu Yan hesitated whether he should teach this child the last volume of Tiantong, because from the beginning he was not supposed to enter the outside world. In particular, the last volume must be kept in the strictest confidence. However, shouldn't he at least pass it on to someone, for example, a child with such outstanding abilities? After finishing his meditation, Jin Young approached Gu Yang and asked him if he had been waiting for him for a long time this time. Gu Yan replied that everything was fine, and noticed that the boy's internal energy was growing like a weed. Jin Young was pleased with his teacher's praise, so he said that it was all thanks to him. Gu Yan was impressed by the boy's sincerity, so he decided to give him the last volume of the Tiantong. Gu Yan explained that it can be said to be the main one of the three great martial arts. Jin Young will be able to release his inner energy outward by moving it at will. If we talk about this whole process in simple terms, it is the management of qi energy. In the future, Gu Yan will definitely teach Jin Young this. Jin Young was sitting under a tree thinking about something personal. He drew on the sand ancient writings that his father studied at the request of the imperial court. Jin Young explained to Cherutan that he understood their hidden meaning a little bit. One of them meant a spell, and not just any spell, but a martial arts spell. The exact name is unknown in that world, but if you translate it into their language, you will get the absorption of the energy of heaven and earth to control the soul. Absorbing the power of heaven and earth is the magic of soul control. The second plate says that the received magical power can be released. Cherutan noticed that it was necessary to use this great demonic ability properly. Jin Young was not at all concerned about power and anger, but about the fact that people who wanted to get it would not let his father leave. Cherutan recommended that he learn the martial art himself, and that there was no one else on earth more suitable for it. Jin Young looked at the spirit skeptically and asked if it really wanted him to become a demon. Cherutan said that was not what he meant, because if he took possession of it, he would be able to properly understand the power of the stone and the magic of the seal. Besides, his strength is not enough to gather energy to release magic. If he learns, he will be able to use the lightning strike technique later. Jin Young asked if he could really use a lightning strike, and Cherutan realized too late that he had said too much. In any case, with his current skills, nothing will work out, because his heart will fail and burn. Jin Young was not afraid of his warnings, so he decided to improve his abilities and asked for 3 years to do so. After a while, Jin Young worked on the statue and asked old Gu Yan interesting questions. For example, about the energy of spirit and earth, because Cherutan divided the spell into 3 parts. The heaven and earth technique of absorbing energy and controlling the soul and talking about martial art magic is not a good idea. Gu Yan thought about it and said that although he had not told him much, it was a very beautiful martial art. Gu Yan suspects that there is a great power in him, and he became very curious about it. The old man reminded Jin Young that he should be very careful in these matters. Jin Young asked if he would learn his technique and another one, whether everything would be fine. The reason why Tiantan is called one of the most important and powerful martial arts is not only because of the depth of its effect on qi. It easily harmonizes with the rest of the martial arts. For laying the foundations, it is better than the other 2. Even if the source of the force is weak, it is one of the 3 great combat techniques. Jin Young was delighted with old Gu Yan's story, as it meant that he could study them all at the same time. Gu Yan emphasized that the heaven and earth technique is a wonderful martial art, so it is important for Jin Young to study it conscientiously. Gu Yan told his student that he had to leave because he had some business to attend to in doju, so he asked him to finish the final touches. Jin Young reflected that he was very happy to be able to use them at the same time, and now he had to practice a lot. At dawn, absorb yin energy, during the day yang energy, and before going to bed practice Tiantan. Then he will be able to create a cycle of 2 energies. But first, he had to finish his work, because 3 days of hard work can go down the drain, so he had to be careful. Jin Young noticed that a rather friendly Harry was approaching him. He asked him what he was doing, and Jin Young said without turning his head that he needed to finish working on the statue today. Harry thought that he used to be the second person on this island, and old Gu Yan was the first, but he was not interested in being the head of the island, so Harry behaved as the head of all the prisoners. It gave him some privileges because he was eating better than everyone else. Also, Volokotic could choose only the job that was the easiest. However, everything changed the moment Jin Young appeared. His strength grew day by day, and he became a favorite of old Gu Yan. At some point, he was treated as the second most important person. Therefore, because of Jin Young, Volokotic's position was seriously shaken. He could still accept the second place, but the third place is not possible, because 2 people are enough to lead everyone. Volokotic became the second most important person on the island at the age of 22. That's why he tried to keep his place for more than a decade. There were many who encroached and stretched their dirty hands to take his place. All of them ended up very badly because Volokotic did not give up his place to anyone, even if he had to cripple them. That place has always remained under his control, so he was remembering it while holding the stick. And now, because of Jin Young's strange abilities, he lives in fear, hiding in the corners of the room, and Harry has just realized that he will not give him his place. While old Gu Yan is gone, the kid is defenseless and has no eyes in the back of his head, so he decides to stab Jin Young in the back. Jin Young suddenly realized that Harry hadn't said a word for a long time. Sensing the danger, Cherutan ordered him to dodge immediately, while Volokotic was already flying at him with a stick. Thanks to Cherutan's gut feeling and warning, Jin Young managed to dodge Harry's sneak attack. But the man was not going to stop. and the hairy man continued to bring his stick over him. Jin Young decided to defend himself by blocking punches with his arm, using the skills he had learned earlier. Jin Young intercepted the stick still in Harry's hands with a sharp movement. Taking advantage of the moment of surprise, Jin Young wanted to snatch the stick out of his hands, but he pulled it toward him with his own strength, along with Volokakatik. Jin Young thus closed the distance between them and hit Harry on the head with his head. He struck so fast and accurately that he lost his balance and flew off a long distance. Unable to stop, Harry continued to fly further down the cliff. Jin Young was worried that he would fall, so he called out to warn him of the danger. But Volokakatik could not resist and was already falling down the canyon with sharp stone spikes at the bottom. Jin Young rushed to his aid in time to grab his arm. He shouted at Volokakatik to hold on to him tightly, because if he let go, he would surely remain strung up on sharp thorns forever. The hairy man held Jin Young's hand and looked down the canyon. Then, with tears in his eyes, he begged to be rescued from this pit. Cheriton asked Jin Young why he should save this monster if he could just let go of his hand and the problem would be solved by itself. No one would even know about it, but on the other side were spectators who watched what was happening between them. If Jin Young lets go of his hand, people might think that he deliberately destroyed him as his rival. For the young man, it was important to avoid accusations that he could have left someone without a life. Jin Young told Harry to hold on tight because he was going to pull him up. Shaggy successfully ended up on the ground, and Jin Young warned him that if he was up to something again, he wouldn't let it go. With tears in his eyes and incredible relief, Volokakatik promised that he would never do that again. Jin Young analyzed the situation while stretching his shoulder and came to the conclusion that it was his own fault that he was attacked today. If it had been a sword and not a stick, he would have lost his arm today, and it is highly likely that he would no longer be alive. Jin Young relaxed and lost his vigilance because his abilities had grown, and he should have paid attention to this so as not to repeat his mistakes. Jin Young ordered Cheriton to be on guard as well because they are one and the same. On the same day, Doju was reflecting on something important to him in his home. When an unexpected visitor came to him in the middle of the night, Dojo immediately recognized him. After all, he was visited by old Gu Yan, who apologized for such a late but important visit. Dojo immediately asked what the purpose of the old sculptor's visit to him was. Old Gu Yan dryly replied that he had a personal request for him. The next day, the work on the island was very difficult because the sun was burning mercilessly. The watchman announced that it was time for lunch, and after the break, everyone had to get back to work. The prisoners didn't even notice that it was time to eat because of the heat, so they quickly wiped their sweaty faces and left work. Jin Young thought about the 6 years that had passed since his conversation with old Gu Yang. Many things happened during this time. For example, Volokakatik treated Jin Young with respect and courtesy after the incident. Harry asked him if he was going down for lunch, and Jin Young said with the same courtesy that he would join them later. The biggest change on the island was the establishment of a relationship with Uncle Volokakatik, because on the day he attacked the young man, Guyan called him to his place. Harry realized what was coming for him, so he began to apologize and swore that he would not do it again, so Guyan ordered him to treat Jin Young as his boss. After all, the young man had saved him. Even though Volokakatik had attempted to kill him, shouldn't he repay him for such kindness? Harry realized that Gu Yang was right, so he obeyed his order and became Jin Yong's assistant. The sun continued to burn mercilessly. Jin Yong wanted to take a break somewhere. Old Gu Yan noticed this and said that the more the sun bakes you, the better you are for him. Yin and Yang are the harmony of heaven and earth, so Jin Young should just accept them. Jin Young exhaled and told Gu Yan that it had been 6 years, and he wondered if he had a chance to get off the island. He was also interested in how strong he would become when he mastered all of his grandfather's martial arts. Gu Yan did not expect such questions, so he did not know how to choose the right words. For example, Gu Yan learned this martial art by himself after receiving it from his master. He never compared himself to others. However, his mentor was one of the 10 best masters in the world. Gu Yan did not have the opportunity to compete with him because he was helped to pass away. The 10 best masters of the world. Jin Young wondered if they were not the same 10 celestial great masters of the world. A martial art is compared to a dozen heavenly swords. If someone heard this, they would laugh a lot. Over the past 6 years of training, he realized that his grandfather Gu Yan's martial art was no joke. Jin Young decided to study with Gu Yang and fulfill his request. Gu Yang seemed a little happier at Jin Young's words, but he will tell the details tonight. After a hot day, night fell, and Gu Yang and Jin Young stood on top of a cliff, illuminated by the moonlight. Gu Yang kept his word, telling the young man that he would first name him Shinsubekta. This technique uses hundreds of movements. It has no beginning or end, and the forms are endless. In the process of valuing harmony, it is important to control qi while performing movements. Fighters in the Central Lands call it an Oriental martial art. Jin Young smiled and clarified whether it meant that it was a free martial art. Gu Yan emphasized that at the beginning of the training, you need to try hard. Jin Young looked at his hands and said that only then would he be free. Guyan did not fully understand whether he was talking about martial arts or about escaping from Chongdong. Even though there was no difference, Guyan decided to tell Jin Young about an important place. That evening, when Guyan came to see Doju, he was surprised that the old man had decided to ask for something, so he wondered what he had asked for. Guyang asked to allow a child named Jin Yong to move freely throughout the island. In return, Guyan promised to create a special sculpture in just one place. Dozu asked the old man if he just needed to give the child freedom to press. It was unexpected because Guyan does so much for that child, and Dozu asked if there would be more requests for him. Guyan replied that this would be enough for a start. Dozu assured him that he would remove the shackles and ensure complete freedom in the Stone Mountains. However, Dozu emphasized that it was forbidden to leave the Stone Mountains, and Guyan already understood this. He also asked for the Eastern Cave for his personal use. Dozu waved his hand and said that he could do what he wanted, because the cave was empty anyway. Guyang led Jin Yong to the same eastern cave, and they stood at its entrance, and the old man began to tell him what. This cave was discovered during excavations about 50 years ago and was used as a home for workers. After the development of the mountains in the west, the house was moved there, and the cave was completely empty because it was too far from the mining site. But this is not a completely useless cave as it seems at first glance. There is one hidden place in the cave that only old Guyan knows about. A place that saved him when he was on the verge of death. Guyan said that this is the secret of the thermal waterfall cave. The old man once decided to name this waterfall Helyangchen, saying that he would be grateful to him and soon Jin Yong would understand why. From that day on, Guyan trained Jin Yong every day in different weather conditions. After training, Jin Yong would let his body rest in a thermal waterfall. Between training sessions, they also made sculptures of incredible beauty and power. At night, Jin Yong and Cheriton would strengthen and improve their magical abilities. When winter came, martial arts classes on the island continued without stopping for a day. Jin Yong made incredible progress thanks to Gu Yang's advice and clear guidance. His movements became faster and his body stronger, and the mana he had accumulated was enough to destroy the island to the ground. On the way to the cell, Guyan realized that it was time to finish his studies. Jin Young noticed that old Guyan was thinking about something sadly, so he asked him if he was okay. But Guyan only ordered him to get on the ship and leave the island. He had already agreed with Doju about it, so he doesn't have to worry about anything. He can just leave. Jin Young was happy to finally leave the island, but he was sorry to leave Guyang alone because he would be sad without him. The old man laughed at his words and said that as soon as he saw him off, he planned to make a special sculpture. All the more reason for someone to look after Volokakatik, and there would be no sadness under such circumstances when Jin Young was now laughing with old Guyang. But the joking ended when Jin Young asked with a serious face if his grandfather would finally tell him what was important. Guyan asked the young man to come closer and spoke his request in his ear. Jin Young froze in place and his eyes rounded. The very day has come when Jin Young, as a young man, will leave the skeleton on which he spent his childhood in confinement. Jin Young played the role of a sailor on a ship transporting stones and sculptures. One irritated Dozu was inspecting the deck and noticed something wrong. Jin Young stood there with his face bandaged and fiddled with one of the statues. The soldier was shouting at a man, pointing at Jin Young and saying that even if there was a shortage of men, they should not take sick cripples on board the ship. But the sailor assured him that the young man was very hardworking and that he had only bandaged the wound on his face, especially since he was working for half the price. Doju praised the sailor for finding a worker for half the price, but he should hire healthy and strong people for the ship next time. After raising the last sculpture to the deck, Dozu ordered the captains to sail away. The ship raised the anchor and set sail for a long journey. Jin Young stood on the deck and watched as his place of detention gradually moved away. But I thought I was waiting for this moment, and now that it's here, it's all so strange. When Jin Young returns to the mainland, he has to do two things. First, he has to save his father. Looking at the horizon, something caught Jin Young's attention. He noticed old Gu Yan standing on the edge of a rocky mountain, silently watching the ship with his best student disappear over the horizon. He recalled the day when he admitted that his real name was Guyan Mubek, and even Doju did not know him because he was listed as old Gu Yang in the Chongdong lists. Jin Young was shocked by the news and asked how the old man could hide his real name for so long. Gu Yan lowered his head and explained that if his name was heard somewhere outside, then everyone who has a name even slightly similar to his will lose their lives. Jin Young asked how this was possible, and Gu Yan explained that there was one person who was quite capable of such an act. Gu Yang put his hand on his shoulder and said that when Jin Young got off the island, he needed to leave a man named Guyan Mugen, his brother's brother, alive. Jin Young asked if he was the same Guyan Mugen of the 10 Heavenly Masters. When he heard the name Guyan Mugen among the Celestials, for some reason he immediately thought of his grandfather. He did not even realize that they were so closely related. Jin Young did not understand why the old man was asking him to destroy his blood relative. Guyan lowered his head and explained that he was not his own brother. his parents adopted him. First and foremost, he is his sworn enemy who killed his parents, the people he loved so much. When old Guyan returned from a 20-year journey with his master, the house where his parents lived was engulfed in flames and the house itself turned into ruins. When he entered the burning house, he saw that everyone he loved had been killed by his brother's hands. He was sobbing on his knees at that moment. His world, like his house, was collapsing right before his eyes. Plunged into deep grief, he did not notice his brother approaching him from behind with a sword that was dripping with the blood of his family. He came to only when his brother was dragging his bloody body somewhere among the large stones. Even in his fading consciousness, he could not ask the same question as to why he had done such a mean thing to his foster family, who had raised him for 30 years. The brother, as if reading his thoughts, dryly said that he did it to pay off his debts and get back what was rightfully his, and then he threw him down the cliff. For so many years, the old man has not been able to figure out what kind of debt it was. Guyan was very lucky to be washed up on this island, but his body was irreparably damaged, so he had to give up revenge. So he left everything behind and started a new life until he met a little boy named Jin Young. His inner strength and abilities grew even in this barren environment. As soon as Guyan saw his potential, he didn't think twice about asking Jin Young to avenge him. However, he could not force him to do so, so he asked him after he had executed his will whether he would be able to fulfill his request afterwards. When Jin Young and Cheriton finished thinking, they looked out at the sea and noticed that the day was cloudy and that there was nothing visible in the sea. Jin Young told Cheriton that thanks to his grandfather Guyan, he hadn't had any scary situations or troubles on the island. Cheriton asked if the old man was watching him on the island to use him for revenge. Jin Young said he would fulfill his request. He doesn't know his intentions, but if he received help from the old man, he should thank him because he understood his motives, because he lost his family in one day. Their conversation was interrupted by raindrops that took them by surprise. Cheriton recommended that Jin Young go into the cabin because if he stays on the deck, he will get wet. Jin Young went to his cabin, hoping that it was just rain. After a while, the ship began to rock violently in different directions, so everyone ran to the deck to find out what the cause was. The captain of the ship was nervous because the wind was getting stronger, raising large waves. Worried, Doju came to the captain to find out what was happening to the ship, who replied that nothing was wrong, just that the wind was blowing even harder. Suddenly, an incredibly powerful lightning bolt struck the seabed in front of the ship. There was panic on the ship because of the thunderous rain, and everyone was worried about what had happened to the sky. The captain shouted to everyone to calm down immediately. They just had to get out of the epicenter of the storm to make everything normal again, and he ordered the sails to be lowered. When everyone ran to fulfill the captain's order, Cheriton looked at the lightning and wondered if the spatial wall had opened right in front of them. The ship, which was struggling with the storm waves, was surrounded and picked up by a huge water wall. Unable to cope with the elements, the ship spun in the sea waves and everyone on board ended up in the water with their belongings. Jin Young wasted no time in trying to swim out of the water and to the surface. Because of his inner strength and endurance, he quickly succeeded. Amid the waves, Jin Young tried to see what had happened and whether anyone else had gotten out of the water. He saw only a completely destroyed ship and people who would remain on the seabed forever. Cheriton saw and warned Jin Young that a new wave was coming, so he should immediately use some magic. Jin Young used a flight spell without thinking twice and jumped over the wave with ease. Cheriton noticed that Jin Young was able to use the flight spell in practice, but because of the strong wind, he had difficulty keeping his balance. The gale force winds and rain were so strong that they greatly hindered his chances of being rescued. Jin Young realized that even with the flight technique, it was impossible to get out of this trap. Cheriton gave Jin Young the idea of calling on a spirit for help. Jin Young was starting to get angry. Where in the middle of the sea could there be a spirit that would come to their aid? He must be mocking him because he already has trouble using magic. Cheriton was not joking with him because when the lightning struck, he felt that the spatial gate had opened. Jin Young remembered his words, but only as they related to the call of the spirit. But Cheriton explained that he felt several entities in the spatial cracks. Two different worlds that should never have met, but due to a thunderstorm, a weak connection appeared. Therefore, he cannot say for sure who the entities of the second world are that he felt near the lumen of the expanded dimension, but there are spirits among them that can be useful to them. Jin Young asked if he was really telling him to call the spirits who had gathered at the border of the two worlds. Jin Young realized that he could not throw away the rest of his energy, so he was worried that he would not summon a spirit but someone else. It was very dangerous to do it in such a place, and if someone as unselfish as Cheriton gets caught, they will definitely stay in this place forever. Cheriton squinted and said that everything would be fine because there was no evil energy coming from there, but he heard what Jin Young had just said about him. Although now is not the time to settle the relationship, Cheriton ordered him to get ready and call at least someone. There is no other way out, so there is nothing left to do but try. Cherutan suggested to Jin Young that the element of air was likely to be involved, so he should summon the spirit of air and let him take care of the details. Jin Young recited a spell to call upon the spirit of Mother Nature's wind-controlling winds to enter into a soul contract with him. Having done everything according to the rules, nothing happened, and Jin Young remained in the middle of the sea with his hand outstretched. Jin Young was angry with Cherutan because he had wasted his energy listening to him. Suddenly, a strange creature appeared in front of his face and asked him where he was. Cherutan and Jin Young were no longer expecting anyone to show up, so they could only stare at her. The fairy asked Jin Young if he was the one who wanted to sign a contract with her. Jin Young opened his mouth in surprise and couldn't say a word, and she urged Jin Young to answer quickly because she had too little time. The fairy crossed her arms over her chest and asked not to make her repeat the same thing twice. The wind was getting stronger, so there was less and less time to think, especially since the fairy had just passed through the spatial gate and was very tired. Jin Young noticed that he was experiencing very strange sensations inside him, similar to those he felt with Cherutan. But now is not the time for that. Jin Young asked her once she was the wind spirit if she would sign a contract with him. The fairy smiled and said that she noticed that he had a lot of mana, so he was perfect for her. In this case, he, Jin Young, concludes a contract of the soul with the spirit of the wind by swearing an oath before God. Ona Selfina admits that she has a soul contract with Jin Young. Now Selfina would like to rest because she is so tired. She wondered what kind of place it was and regretted going up to the barrier to see it. Jin Young asked Cherutan if all spirits were like her, but he didn't know, so he assumed that she was not yet mature. Jin Young took hold of his head and said that he had enough of one idiot and now there was another one. Cherutan reminded them that this was not their problem at all, because the storm had not gone away, and in fact it was getting worse as it moved toward them. If this continues, they will not get out of there until it is too late, so we need to break through somehow. Selfina decided to get rid of it right now. With a wave of his magical and fragile hand, the waves that were coming at them turned into the sea surface. Jin Young and Cherutan were pleasantly surprised by her skills and how easily she solved the problem. But after a while, Jin Young regretted it because Selfina had lost all wind, so now he was in the middle of a still sea. It would take a lot of magic to lift this board he's sitting on into the sky, so you can't just fly blindly, and riding the waves is not an option. Jin Young asked Selfina if she could use her magic to create wind so they could sail, and she said she could, but she didn't want to because she was very tired. Jin Young said that they had been resting for 3 days, and that wasn't simple enough. Selfina didn't like to work, she wanted to rest all her life. Jin Young reminded her of the contract and asked her to push the board with magic. Selfina didn't like it, but she had no choice. Selfina flew off to fulfill the order, and on the way, she complained that she had chosen the wrong master. Cherutan asked Jin Young to pay attention to something interesting. I could see 2 ships on the horizon, but they were too far away to see anything. Jin Young called Selfina, but she yelled at him because she was already working and he wanted something from her. Jin Young asked Selfina to take off unnoticed and reconnoiter what kind of ships were on the horizon. Selfina said that she knew what ships looked like because she was not some stupid demon, so it was not a problem for her. But the problem was that she was lazy. Cherutan said that she is an incredible lazy person for a contracted spirit and also allows herself to make such statements. Jin Young reassured Cherutan that she didn't even know he existed and that she would probably even curse the emperor while he was away. Although Cherutan is not a king or emperor, he cannot lose his self-respect if some third-rate spirit dares to open his mouth like that. Selfina returned from reconnaissance and found out that these were definitely ships with people fighting with each other. Jin Young wondered how many ships there were, and Selfina said there were only 2. The struggle on the ship was fierce, and there were already many victims. Jin Young was quietly spying on them and couldn't decide whether he should go up there or not. Nevertheless, he decided to go up on the deck of the ship and join the battle. Many lifeless people were lying in front of Jin Young's feet. Jin Young looked at them and realized that this was such a terrible reality. He was preparing himself to enter this cruel world, and if he was shaking from this, it meant that he was not capable of anything at all. Jin Young tried to figure out what was going on, because there were people with a golden dragon pattern, perhaps they were sea dragons, and their opponents looked like real pirates who most likely attacked them. While Jin Young was thinking about which side he should take, pirates noticed him and started attacking. However, he noticed in time that the opponents were weak and slow. That's why it was not difficult for Jin Young to resist the pirates and easily dodge their attacks. But dodging was too uninteresting, so Jin Young automatically decided on the side to attack the pirate. The other pirates saw their man fly into the wall at high speed, but because they lost their vigilance, they did not see how they were attacked by a fast and strong stranger. Jin Young caught the red-haired pirate by the throat and slammed him to the deck with incredible force. This fierce struggle and, in general, the new unknown person on the ship. We quietly watched someone's rather inquisitive and incredibly beautiful eyes. The man with the golden dragon armband was angry as the pirate bastards dared to attack the sea dragons. He was shouting for everyone to hear that the Central troops would not just leave it alone. The pirate pointed a dagger at him and said that he was too talkative for a dead man. However, Jin Young repelled the pirate's attack by protecting a member of the Sea Dragon's crew. The pirate did not like this interference and wondered who it was. Jin Young called Selphine, but she was again unhappy about it because she was so tired today. Jin Young asked her to just adjust the wind magic and then let her rest. The pirate was torn apart with rage and shouted at Jin Young as he dared to underestimate him, as if he didn't know who he was facing. After saying this, the pirate drew his sword and rushed at Jin Young with incredible aggression. Jin Young and Cherutan were ready to greet him with a bundle of inner energy. Jin Young tossed the energy ball along with the pirate leader like a ball. The attack was so fast that the pirate did not even realize what had happened and why he was flying straight into the sea. Jin Young was even a little sorry that the pirates would become shark food, so it could be considered karma. As expected, the shark immediately picked up the pirate, who was thrown overboard. While Jin Young was worried about the pirate for some reason, a member of the Water Dragon's crew was watching him closely and wondering who he was. Jin Young noticed him and immediately introduced himself by slamming his fist into his palm. The pirates announced that their captain had been eliminated, so they had to retreat immediately. One of the pirates was looking overboard and wondering where this little monster had come from, and he promised to wring Cho Jungman's neck next time. The pirate ship retreated in defeat, and everyone on the Sea Dragon looked on with relief. Now it was important for them to deal with the bodies of those who had fallen in battle and the heavily wounded soldiers. Jin Young asked if Cho Jungmyung was okay because it was an unpleasant fight, but instead of answering, the captain bowed low to Jin Young in deep respect for saving them. He was afraid of sounding rude, but he couldn't help but ask where Jin Young had come from, since there were no other ships nearby. Jin Young laughed and said that the ship he was sailing on had actually sunk, and he had the opportunity to drift on the sea on that door from the cabin, and he even pointed to it for clarification. Cho Jungmyeon's daughter came up to the two of them and told them that Jin Young's words were true. The captain's daughter was an incredibly beautiful girl, and what stood out most about Yeon Hyang were her large and expressive eyes. Jin Young immediately noticed her eyes because there was something in them that he didn't know. Yeon Hyang admitted that she had been watching him through the crack, and she also saw Jin Young sail on that board to the ship. The girl noticed a dragon drawing on it, and if her memory serves her right, it was the door of a cabin on the ship Shin Renho. Jin Young looked at the unfortunate board and realized that it was hard to see it from the deck, let alone the details of how the girl had seen everything through that gap. Cho Jungmyeon interrupted them and asked if they were saying that Shin Renho had drowned. He looked at Jin Young and apologized for being rude, but he didn't look like a sailor, and he clarified whether he was sure he was sailing on that ship. Jin Young replied that this was how he was hired as a temporary sailor on the ship. They loaded their belongings, but on the way they got caught in a storm and the ship capsized due to strong winds and high waves. Cho Jung-man was upset that such a large ship had disappeared without a trace due to bad weather. Yeon Hyang asked her father to go get some rest, and their guest had been adrift at sea for 3 days and must be very tired. It would be rude to stand on deck like that, but we can discuss the details later. In any case, his daughter was right, and Cho Jung-myung was very grateful to Jin Young because without him they would have had big problems. Cho Jung-man was very interested in the details of his journey here, but first he sent him to get a good night's sleep. On the way to his cabin, Jin Young met eyes with Yeon Hyang. The girl was surprised by his courage because he looked into her eyes as if nothing had happened. Because no one but her family can look her straight in the eye, she thought he was an amazing person. Cho Jung-min asked his daughter if everything the young man said was true. Yeon Hyang confirmed her words that she did not see any lies in him. His soul was pure. The gift of celestial foresight revealed the truth and the lie, and the eyes of divine foresight will not allow a lie. Yeon Hyang wondered if their ship had encountered a storm, if her father's friends had been killed, but Cho Jung-min agreed that it would be difficult to find them among the living. It is quite normal for a sailor to complete his life cycle at sea, and there is even a belief. In the end, Cho Jung-man lost many glorious sailors while searching for his friend's ship. He also shouldn't have taken his daughter with him, but Yeon Hyang only wanted to be helpful, so she followed them. Cho Jung-myung's best reward is that his daughter is safe and sound. The next evening, they gathered again on the deck where Jin Young told about everything he had experienced on that trip. Cho Jung-myun understood everything and wondered what Jin Young was going to do now. He said that as soon as he got to land, he was going to go to the north of the country. Jin Young had an important job to do that had to be done. Cho Jung-myung understood his intentions, so he explained that tomorrow they would sail for one more day and then change course to land. Cherutan ordered Jin Young to look straight ahead because they were looking at the coveted free land. After spending so much time at sea, Jin Young and Truten have forgotten what it's like to step onto the solid ground of the continent. Finally, Jin Young, Cho Jungman, and Yeon Hyang disembarked from the ship and landed on the ground. On the shore, some people who looked quite high-ranking were waiting for them. Cho Jung-mon bowed to his uncle and said that he had already arrived back. My uncle said that Cho Jung-myung did a very good job on the assignment. After all, pirates have been getting more and more brazen lately, and he is very worried about it, and there is such a wind at sea. Suddenly, he looked his nephew straight in the eye and asked him with a serious face if Yeon Hyang had checked the young man, who said that he was clean. Only then did he approach Jin Young and introduce himself as Yuk Dae-ho, commander of the Sea Dragon Fleet. Yuk Dae-ho was very grateful to Jin Young for his help in saving his people, but he wanted to hear something else from him. But first, he invited Jin Young to come inside and warned him that he had little to tell him, so he shouldn't expect much from him. Later, Yuk Dae-ho sat on a throne surrounded by soldiers on both sides, and Jin Young stood opposite him. The soldiers guarding him kept their eyes on Jin Young, wondering how such a young master had managed to become famous. It was hard for Jin Young to ignore the many inquisitive eyes on him, and on the other side of him were the beautiful eyes of Yeon Hyang. Cheritan looked at Jin Young skeptically and asked what was so beautiful about them because it looked like she was always very unhappy. Cheritan asked what was good about eyes that looked right into his soul. From the moment they met, that girl looked into the depths of Jin Young's soul. That's why Cheritan magically clouded her mind, and in this state, she would not be able to reveal their lies. Cheritan still felt uncomfortable, and she looked very much like a celestial. But suddenly Yuk Dae-ho asked himself what they had in the end. The wind increased and a storm broke out, and such a large ship sank immediately, with only one person surviving. Jin Young put his hand on his heart and said that this is exactly how it happened. He was just lucky to be alive in such a storm. Yuk Dae-ho noticed that even temporary sailors cannot get on the Sinrenho unless someone recommends them to the ship. He was heading to Cheonggeundong and chose only carefully vetted sailors, and he was curious who recommended Jin Young. Jin Young asked why he was so interested in this, whether he felt bad that the young man had survived. Yuk Dae-ho explained to him that, if you think about it, no one really noticed that Sinrenho was missing because he regularly sailed to Cheongdong, and suddenly there is only one survivor and a living person, and the ship itself sank during the storm. The problem was that it was an unknown person. Of course, those who sailed on the same day talked about strong winds and high waves, but they were not happy. None of them mentioned in their reports a storm that could sink a large ship. Jin Young asked Cheritan why no one knew there was a storm, and he replied that perhaps the storm started only in the place where the spatial wall was open. Jin Young knew that no one would believe in the existence of such a wall. They might even think he was lying, and that his true intentions were completely different. Jin Young asked them to be frank with him and tell him directly what they wanted to know from him. Yuk Dae-ho said that it was really time to get to the point, so they would like to know his identity. After all, if it was a real storm, it could sink any ship, no matter how big it was. However, even those who are considered to have been born at sea would not have been able to get out of there, and only a young man who relied on one cabin door survived. Regardless of the fact that Cho Jung-myung recognized Jin Young as a skilled fighter, he finds it hard to believe. Jin Young smiled and finally realized where this was going. One man who was close to Yuk Dae-ho asked the young man why he was laughing. Jin Young explained that he was very amused by how much people can be distrusted. The second person with the Sea Dragon armband shouted that the little bastard had no right to talk like that. He got up and quickly went to deal with the ill-mannered Jin Young. He shouted how dare he talk to the commander-in-chief like that, and everyone watched with bated breath, especially Yeon Hyang. Jin Young realized that there was no point in proving anything to them, because they just wanted to know what he was capable of. The man had already attacked him, saying that he would now test his skills and see what he could boast of. Jin Young was knocked back a long way by his attack, but managed to stay on his feet. For some time, they threw each other until they switched to close combat. Jin Young skillfully attacked and repelled the enemy's equally professional attacks. Then he bided his time and delivered a powerful blow to his opponent's stomach. This left Yuk Dae-ho and his close associates' jaws hanging in amazement. The enemy was defeated, and Jin Young looked triumphantly at those who doubted his abilities. The second commander analyzed in his head that he could not even see his movements. He did not understand how this was possible. Yuk Dae-ho ordered Commander Guok to also check what Jin Young is still capable of. Commander Guok obeyed the order of the fleet commander, so he was already standing opposite Jin Young. Guok praised Jin Young, saying that the previous battle was incredible because the defeated was never a weakling. He wondered who he was. Jin Young reminded him that he had already said his name before, so did he really want to start all over again? Commander Guok drew his sword and said that he did not want to repeat it, but he would have to interrogate him with his sword. Unarmed Jin Young took a defensive posture and ordered Guok to attack him. Commander Guok attacked him with his sword, but Jin Young dodged his attack by jumping behind him. Commander Guok, turning back, swung his sword again but to no avail, for his young opponent dodged all his attacks. Jin Young realized who he was dealing with, so he gave his fist magical power to counterattack his opponent. Quickly reaching Commander Guok, he hit the enemy's chest with his magic fist. Catching his breath, Guok wondered how Jin Young had managed to hit him so hard in an unstable stance. Commander Guok realized that he was dealing with something more than just a kid, so he needed to do his best, so he gave the sword magic. Jin Young immediately realized that he had imbued the sword with Tao energy. Commander Guok warned Jin Young that this time it would not be so easy to defeat him. He attacked him with his sword using a cross-cutting technique. Jin Young didn't even move, even though there was an energy wall in front of him. Jin Young smashed it to pieces with his magic fist, surprising everyone, especially Yuk Daeho. Jin Young warned that if he continued to attack, he would no longer be able to restrain himself in strength. Commander Guok, hiding his sword, said that there was no need for this because there was no place to humiliate himself anymore. He bowed down before the fleet commander-in-chief and said that he had tarnished the name of the Sea Dragons, so he did not think he could continue to serve as a commander. Yuk Daeho assured Guok that everything was fine because they hadn't expected Jin Young to be so strong and capable. He went down to Jin Young and tried to justify what was happening here, and hoped for his understanding, because if Jin Young were in his place, he would have done the same. Yuk Daeho apologized to the young man, as he felt sorry that he could not respond to his help in a decent way and only inconvenienced him. Jin Young decided to turn the situation in his favor, so he asked if he could ask for something in return. After all, the Sea Dragons were considered one of the 3 pillars of the Merchants Association, and as far as he knew, they were unrivaled in intelligence. Yuk Daeho said that what he said was completely true, and he wondered what Jin Young wanted to know. Jin Young explained that the association supplies most of the items to the imperial court, so he had a small request. Jin Young told Yuk Daeho that he would like to know a little more about the imperial palace. Yuk Daeho was surprised by his request because didn't the young man know how dangerous it was to disclose such information? Yuk Daeho promised he would do his best, but what he was looking for could put their fleet in even more danger. Jin Young explained that he only wanted to know where some people were being held, but if it was so impossible, he would not insist on it. Yan Hyang decided to ask Jin Young if he hadn't told her earlier that he was heading north. Jin Young told her that his plans had not changed. Yan Hyang said they also have business on the way north, so it won't take long if he allows it. But before she could finish, Jin Young agreed to her proposal with a surprised expression on his face and said he would first listen to her business. After the conversation, they went to a tea shop to talk about the details of the trip. Yang Hien said that her sister Ha is very important to the Merchants Association and that she is holding a wake for her late mother in Tangshan. However, lately the road to it has not been easy, so she asked for support from the Sea Dragon fleet. They would probably be heading north in a few days, and Yang Hyang asked if he could trust a person he knew nothing about. Jin Young smiled and said that he would have to go with them as well. Yang Hyang poured tea and said that Sister Ha told her that she wanted to see her, even though she didn't like her very much. Recently, they have suffered very large losses due to pirate attacks. So many capable masters have died, so in this situation it is not known when they will be reprimanded by the association. Jin Young asked if she could refuse her sister Ha's visit, and Yan Hyang said that she could not. Therefore, since it happened, she can only trust her own eyes. But if she is wrong, she will also be in great danger. Jin Young pondered her words for a while, weighing the pros and cons, and finally agreed to accompany her. Cherutan was angry with him, calling him a wimp because he knew from the beginning that Jin Young was too soft. Yan Hyang sat at the table and thought that she was taking him not because of a shortage of people, but because she could not see the true nature of this guy. As if something was constantly interfering with her, she realized that a master like him could not be just a temporary sailor. Yan Hyang did not know what to think, because for the first time in her life she could not see the soul of a person. All she can do in this situation is worry, because she couldn't find out what Jin Young was thinking. She really wanted to believe him, but the thought that there might be something wrong with her confused her. Just as Yan Hyang said, a few days passed and on the day of departure the carriage was ready. Jin Young called out to Yan Hyang because he wanted to ask him something about the trip. But wasn't he dressed in the clothes that all scientists wear? Jin Young looked at him skeptically. He shrugged and asked if they really wanted him to become a scientist. Yan Hyang laughed at his appearance and how angry he was, and later explained that this outfit would solve his personality problem. Yan Hyang asked Jin Young not to use her powers until they were in danger. After all, they gave him these clothes specifically for cover, and Jin Young already understood that, so he promised to do everything in his power. Their conversation was interrupted by a red-haired man who for some reason called Jin Young his partner. A red-haired man with a kind smile extended his hand and introduced himself as Yu Rian. Jin Young shook his hand in return and told him his name. It was a pleasure to meet such a capable and young master. Yang Hyun explained that Yu Rian was one of their 5 best masters, and she thought he would be very useful because he had a lot of combat experience. Yu Young had already heard the talk of Jin Young defeating Commander Guok, so he was happy to be entrusted with Jin Young. Jin Young was pleased with his praise and hoped that he could learn a lot from him on the road. After exchanging pleasantries, Yeon Hyang went to the carriage and Jin Young stayed outside. He noticed that one of the attendants stood with his back to him all the time. He recognized him as his first opponent, whom he had competed with in front of the fleet commander, so he asked if his body was okay. He jumped up at the question and answered sharply that he was. Jin Young noticed that after that incident he was clearly afraid of him. Urian took the reins and announced that everything was ready to go. He turned to his fellow travelers and told them that they had a long journey ahead of them, so it was time to go. Their carriage had been traveling for a long time through wide fields and deep forests. Jin Young looked out the window and thought about how he hadn't smelled the forest for a long time, and he noticed that the forest air was very different from the sea air. Unknown people hid behind the trees and watched their carriage from their ambush. Jin Young noticed them right away and decided not to disclose them for now, but to just follow them. Urian told everyone that he thought it was going to rain. Yang Hyang said that the downpour will start in about an hour, so they need to find a place to wait. Uriang mentioned that there is a temple of Jeonyeomsa not far from here, and maybe they should go there. Yeon Hyang said that this is a good idea because she thinks that the rain will not end quickly today. They will rest there, and tomorrow they will go on the road again. Urian decided to warn his fellow travelers that this was a strange place, and they should look around. Uriang asked Ms. Yang Hyang and Mr. Jin Young to be on standby. Jin Young crossed his arms and told Yong Han that the men had fallen on their trail 10 miles back. Yeon Hyang became uneasy and asked why he had only just mentioned it. Jin Young explained that he didn't want the enemy to realize that they had spotted him, because he was going to deal with them one by one anyway. Jin Young assessed the situation and said that it was time for Yang Hyang to be very concerned and worried. Their carriage was stopped by an enemy group, and Urian tried to figure out who their sudden opponents were. He asked them who they were, but the bandits in black headscarves did not answer him, but only pointed their swords at him. Urian went down to them, repeating his question until a man he immediately recognized came out to him. Before him stood members of the Big Triad, led by their leader. Urian angrily asked how such freaks could attack members of the association. But the leader of the Big Triad asked him since when he had to report to him. Urian noticed that as soon as they contacted Chunhwa's organization, they began to do evil. The leader of the Big Triad was smiling and saying that everything had really spun out of control. They follow their master's orders, so if they hand over the girl, they will be spared. A voice was heard from the carriage saying that a group that preys on women is worse than any bandits in the world. The leader of the Big Triad was bursting with anger and demanded to see who had just said this. Jin Young slowly got out of the carriage, stretching his shoulders, and admitted to everyone that it was very uncomfortable to ride. A member of the gang with green hair asked who he was and dressed up like a scientist and dared to call them robbers. Jin Young asked, if not robbers, what else to call the people who blocked their way and demanded to see the girl. The green-haired bandit grabbed Jin Young by the collar and pulled him toward him. In order to say that he was a member of the Great Triad of Dong Ho Gang, he asked him if he was going to fight with him. Jin Young had to answer to him personally for such words, so Dong Ho Gang raised his fist over him and said something about his upbringing. But Jin Young easily intercepted his fist with his palm. But Dong Ho Gang was not an easy man, so without taking his fist away, he began to release some strange energy from it. Jin Young tried to understand whether he was trying to pour his energy into him, or whether he was taking it away. In this case, it was enough for Jin Young to absorb all his energy with his technique. There was an invisible energy flow between them that circulated from one to the other. Dong Ho Gang began to suspect that he was not the one stealing the energy, but rather the other way around. He quickly snatched his hand away, ordering him to let go. Do Ho Han was holding his hand and trying to figure out how he had been outplayed by some unknown young man. After the energy exchange, Jin Young felt the same sensation as when he touched the artifact many years ago. He decided to ask Cheruton if he knew anything about what had just happened. The leader of the Big Triad was going to finish the job without shedding blood, however. He ordered his subordinates to rush into the attack and kill everyone except the girl. Yuran ordered the escort soldiers to protect the carriage at all costs and not to come near Miss Yeon Hyang. The warriors of the Great Triad attacked, and Yurian and the warriors prepared to repel the attacks and destroy the enemies. There was a fierce struggle, and it was difficult to see the movements of the attackers and those defending the position. The leader of the Great Triad drew his sword, which meant that he had chosen a worthy opponent. Jin Young suddenly looked toward the leader because he felt an evil energy coming from him. He realized that he had to get rid of this leader of the fire first of all, while he had already brought his sword over him. But Jin Young's hand was faster, so it caught the leader's face from behind. Using the technique of celestial sparks, the flames wrapped around his entire arm like a snake. The leader fell into his trap, so Jin Young used a volley of fire. This was followed by the final stage of releasing energy on the enemy. The flames enveloped the entire body of the leader of the Great Triad at once. His men could not understand how their leader could catch fire. They were distracted. Jin Young took advantage of this by quietly sneaking up on the enemies behind their backs. With quick movements, Jin Young attacked the Triad members on their heads. Jin Yong was a tasty morsel for enemies because he was attacked by 4 people at the same time. Jin Yong used the fantasy finger technique to release energy into the ground, triggering a powerful explosion. The earthquake knocked down all the attackers for a while, knocking them unconscious. Members of the Great Triad saw Jin Yong as the dragon himself, breathing fire. Jin Yong destroyed anyone who attempted to jeopardize the safety of the association's members. The rest of the enemies who had stopped their attacks and just watched their comrades being killed realized that they should surrender and run away. Jin Yong stood in front of Dong Ho Gang, who asked him if he surrendered, would he spare him. Jin Yong is not the kind of person who enjoys mockery, so he saw no problem in killing the retreating people. He was only interested in why they wanted to take that girl away. Jin Yong crossed his arms and reminded Dong Ho Gang not to keep him waiting too long. After all, his brother had suffered severe burns, and if he was not taken to a doctor, he might be given to God. Dong Yong-han turned his head to the side and shamefully told Jin Yong that they had obeyed Chunhua's order. Yan Hyang asked him if he meant the entire organization. Yang Hyang clarified that it was possible that Mr. Tuck gave them the order directly. Dong Yon-han replied that this was exactly what happened, and he told me to bring Yan Hyang. Jin Young asked why they decided to do it in such a radical way. Don Yong-han explained that they were ordered to bring Yang Hyang regardless of the circumstances. Yan Hyang was upset because she understood everything. Jin Young noticed this and didn't ask anything. Urian ordered him to surrender because he did not think that his master wanted to start a serious battle. Moreover, even if he continues the battle, he still has no chance of survival. Urian thought that although it was hard to believe, they had a very capable fighter. The enemy gritted his teeth and asked if he should start begging for forgiveness and mercy. The members of the Big Triad picked up their wounded leader and left the battlefield. Jin Young watched them go and suddenly realized that today, he had set a man on fire with magic, even though it could have been avoided. But the moment it began to absorb his inner energy, his thirst for destruction increased many times over, and Jin Young didn't even try to suppress it. He realized that if they continued to attack, he would have killed absolutely everyone in order to finally get rid of that thirst. Jin Young wondered if there was anything else he didn't know about the technique of absorbing the energy of the power of heaven and earth and controlling the soul. Jin Young and the others eventually made it to Jonimsa Temple, where they planned to wait out the downpour. Yan Hyang was sitting in the room, and Jin Young was looking into the distance and thinking about his own. Yang Hyang thanked him, because if it wasn't for him, they would not have gotten out of there safe and sound. Jin Young said that he shouldn't thank him because he hadn't done anything special, but he was curious about the young Mr. Tak. Yan Hyang asked if Jin Young had heard of the Chunhua Trade Organization. Jin Young said he knew it was one of the largest trade groups. The owner of Chunhua, Tak Chunbo, and his second son, Tak Inho, is the young Mr. Tak. Jin Young did not understand why he wanted to kidnap her. Yang Hyang explained that 10 months ago, a hawk, a young Mr. Tak, came from Chunghua and told her that he wanted to take her to his place. It all happened that year on my grandparents' 60th birthday. Mr. Tak said he wanted to see the Genju district, so Yan Hyang accompanied him. She was sure that it was on that day that he noticed her. Yan Hyang knew that her father would be strongly against it. Jin Young thought that no one would refuse such a lucrative marriage, so what was the reason for refusal? Is it possible that this is because the Sea Dragons belong to an association? Jin Young has heard that those in power try to make a favorable marriage, so this is not the case. Jin Young looked at Yan Hyang and wondered if she would even want to go there. If I could refuse, it would not cause so much internal pain. Meanwhile, a door opened in one of the residences, and a man behind it said that Cho Yonghyang would soon arrive in Tien. The woman was sitting at the table and asked if her brother Tak would also come. The guy said he got the news that In Ho is now with Tien. The woman told him to hurry there as well, and the boy said that of course he had to be there because he was very interested in how beautiful Yan Hyang had become. The woman smiled and said that in the heart of brother Tak Tai, this Cho Yan Hyang was not only present everywhere. The guy raised his hands in the air and said that this could not be true because he was only attracting her attention so that their plan would work. The woman emphasized that they should try very hard because their parents' house is also looking forward to it. The woman hinted to the guy that thanks to this case, she would decide how to treat him better, so it was better not to disappoint her. The guy asked her not to worry because he would do his best to tear Cho Yonhyang out of In-ho's heart forever. He leaned closer and asked if it would be better to erase In-ho from Yonhyang's mind. The woman looked at him seriously and said that this was exactly what she wanted, because it was all for the sake of her brother. In the cozy town of Tianjin, Yan Yuriyang and Yan Hyang were sitting in a tea house. Yurian said that they were lucky because they were not attacked on the way to Tien. He also asked if Miss Yang Hyang was going to go to Tainan today. Yan Hyang said that they would rest here today and go there tomorrow morning. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a man who said he had not seen Miss Cho for a long time. Yan Hyang agreed with him and said that they hadn't seen each other for about a year. Mr. Tuck replied that they really hadn't seen each other for about a year. Tak In-ho looked her straight in the eye and said that during this time his heart was full of emotions. He apologized for the incident with the detachment because there was a misunderstanding due to a misinterpretation of his order. Tak In-ho asked to politely accompany Yon Hyang, but they were too motivated. Yon Hyang did not let him finish and scolded him that he had almost killed a man. Tak In-hong said that fortunately everyone was alive, so he ordered them to keep their mouths shut so that they would not even dare to talk to anyone about that terrible incident. He also apologized to the sea dragons, so there's no problem. Meanwhile, Jin Young drank his tea and thought that this gentleman was a very self-confident person. Tak In-ho looked at Jin Young and noticed that this must be the scientist the whole triad was talking about. Jin Young said that it was indeed him, but he had a serious conversation with Mr. Tak. Jin Young warned him that he had never seen people like him end up well and advised him to be very careful. Tak In-ho noted that his words apply to everyone who has mastered the skills of martial arts. Yon Hyang watched the two of them argue and asked Mr. Tak if he would mind if she and her people went away and relaxed for a while. He had caused them a lot of problems on the way here, so they were very tired. So In-ho understood her hints and sent them to rest as soon as possible, promising that he would come to them again tomorrow. Yong Hyang refused because they would be leaving for Taishan early tomorrow morning. Tak In-ho said that they would meet tomorrow anyway. The next day, all three of them were standing there, and Jin Young was thinking about the fact that Mr. Tak had imposed himself on them. The guy ran out to meet them, waving his hand in a friendly manner. He was very pleased to see the guests and especially pleased with Yon Hyang, calling her a beautiful flower and trying to hold her hand. The boy asked his brother Tak why he had come, because they say that he has been getting along well with Miss Yeon-ho lately. So In-ho became visibly nervous and angry, and he made excuses that it was all nonsense. Mr. Tak's brother continued to say that he understood that it was difficult for Tak In-ho to talk about such things in front of Ms. Cho Yeon-hyang. Tak In-ho took his hand off his shoulder and said that he was crazy to say such nonsense to him. Tak's brother said that he had heard a rumor from Chunghwa that Ms. Yeon-ho and Tak's brother would get engaged next month, or maybe he had misunderstood something. There were rumors that the two of them fell in love when they went on a trip together, so he thought it might be true. So In-ho justified that he met her while traveling, and nothing more. Although there are rumors of a wedding with Yeon-ho's family, it was not part of Tak In-hong's plans. His brother said that he just hoped that the engagement would not be broken off because his brother was chasing a second girl while they were negotiating a marriage. So In-ho ordered his brother Ha Gun-san to watch his tongue. Ha Gun-san said that because of his bad temper, his brother broke off his engagement to Ms. Gong-sung and now to Ms. Yeon-ho. Tak In-ho finally lost his temper and punched Ha Gun-san in the face. Jin Young and Yon Hyang witnessed this event, so they stood there and didn't even know how to react. Yes! In-ho yelled at his brother because he had already warned him to watch what he said. Ha-gun-san, wiping his lip of blood, told his brother that he was too quick to use his fists. He got to his feet and said that maybe it was for the best because they hadn't competed for a long time. So In-ho supported his initiative and also got ready to fight. Jin Young watched them and thought it was amazing that the son of the head of a trade association had such a story. He is much stronger than the Great Triad, perhaps even equal to Guak Jung. Yon Hyang asks Jin Young if they need to be separated, and he says that they don't look like they can be negotiated with. Suddenly, a woman came out and asked in a serious tone who was making all this noise. After all, the wake is still not over for those who allowed themselves to use inner energy in the place of worship. After all, she asked her brother to meet the guests, but she doesn't remember saying anywhere that she told him to give him a fight. Tak In-ho stood up for him, explaining that he had made a mistake because for the first time in a long time he wanted to compete with his brother Tak. The woman made a very surprised expression, asking if brother Tak had come here specifically to meet her. Tak In-ho realized that she was playing a role, but politely replied that he was also glad to see her. Yon Hyang bowed to her and said that she hadn't seen her for a long time either. Sister Ha said that she was good to come. Yon Hyang said she couldn't help but come because they had put so much effort into organizing the wake. Sister Ha told her that it was her duty, so it was not a big deal for her. Mrs. Ha asked the guests to leave with Gun-san and she would come back for them later, as she had something to say. Later, Jin Young went for a walk, but Cherutan wondered if he really needed to go with that girl. Jin Young told him that there was nothing he could do. She said that she needed to talk to Ms. Ha Ju-ren alone. But for some reason he was very concerned that he did not understand what those people were thinking. He walked around for a while thinking, when suddenly something caught Jin Young's attention. He saw an old man sitting under the wall writing something on the ground. Cherutan asked Jin Young what had suddenly happened to make him stop. But as soon as Jin Young turned his attention to Cherutan, the old man seemed to vanish into thin air. Jin Young quickly ran to the place where the old man had just been sitting, completely confused as to where he could have gone. Of course, Jin Young has heard that there are as many people with special abilities hidden in this world as there are grains of sand in the sea. Cherutan said that people don't know that it would be difficult for a mediocre skill to deceive his eyes. Jin Young was curious about what the old man had written, and it seemed to him that the text was written in an ancient language. Jin Yong noticed an older man walking by. He called him in and asked if he could ask him something. The old man didn't mind, so Jin Yong asked if there was a thin Taoist with disheveled hair in their town. The old man repeated the question to himself, asking if Jin Yong was referring to that madman. Jin Yong did not expect such an answer, so he did not even know what questions to ask next. But the old man continued that the man had gone mad 20 years ago, and that he was not here for the ceremony but because he was just wandering around by himself. The old man and the rest of the people in the village did not take it seriously, so he advised him to do the same. But Jin Yong wondered where he could find him, and instead of answering, the old man asked why he was meeting with that madman. Finally, he told me about the place where the weirdo often visits. As night fell, Jin Yong waited for the old man at the spot the man from the square had pointed out. He had enough time to think that the moon is somehow especially beautiful from the top of the mountain. Feeling someone else's presence, Jin Yong said that he knew he was there, so he stopped hiding. Old Dao came out of the bushes and approached Jin Yong, asking who he was and what he wanted. Jin Yong mysteriously said that it didn't matter who he was. Old Tao asked what was important to him then. Jin Yong told him the word Chasin, and next to that word was a half-erased ancient text. Old Tao asked why such a young scholar needed such ancient writings. Jin Yong explained that he was just curious about ancient writings, or maybe there was some reason why a young scholar shouldn't know. Old Tao answered him that he ruled, but he had a second question. He was curious, so when he approached Jin Yong, Dao asked if he was alone. The old man looked at Jin Yong with a piercing gaze, asking if there was anyone else inside him. Jin Yong was worried that someone might have guessed about Cheriton, so he asked cautiously what it meant. Old Dao explained that Jin Yong exudes a very strange energy, not human, but completely otherworldly. Jin Yong realized that the old man had guessed everything, but he only said that it would be difficult for him to answer his questions. Jin Yong could only tell him that the energy of his spirit could not harm anyone. Old Dao didn't understand how, but Jin Yong smiled and said that he hadn't even done anything to him, let alone the world around him. Old Dao lowered his head and said that there were many different strange things happening in the world, but he was pleased to realize that Jin Yong was one of them. Jin Yong bowed and was very pleased with his words and understanding. However, Jin Yong was very curious about how Dao knew that he had a second soul. Old Dao did not answer, but turned around and called Jin Yong to follow him. For some time, Jin Yong followed the old Tao and came to a high waterfall. Jin Yong entered the hidden cave and asked if Tao really wanted to show him this. In front of them was a wall with many symbols and lines of ancient writing. In one of them, Jin Yong was able to read the word Chasen Ihan, which means two souls. Dao explained that this was one of the 18 scriptures he had found. He had read all the books in his mentor's room without his knowledge. It was thanks to him that old Dao saw through Jin Yong's little secret. However, this is only a small part of what he managed to find out, and there was no further progress. Old Dao looked at Jin Yong and asked why they couldn't figure it out together. Deciphering the ancient writings and learning about Qixing Ihon Tao made me wonder how many people in the world also have a second soul. Jin Yong touched the wall with his hand and said that he had studied this for a long time, so he didn't know much and it would take a long time to explain all these writings. The old Tao wondered if there was a person who could immediately analyze them. Jin Yong said that more than 10 years have passed since he was imprisoned in the imperial prisons, and he does not even know for sure whether he is still alive. Old Dao asked if Jin Yong wanted to rescue him from there, to which he replied that of course he did, and that's why he was heading north. Old Dao put his hand on his chest and told Jin Yong that he would share this journey with him. So they did. Jin Yong walked in front and Old Man Dao behind. Suddenly, Old Dao stopped Jin Yong because he wanted to ask him something. Old Dao wondered why Jin Yong had dressed him in such elegant clothes. Jin Yong turned to him and asked if he really wanted to walk around in his old underpants. Old Dao began to argue whether clothes were something important, and Jin Yong replied that there was a limit to everything. Jin Yong wondered who the old man wanted to meet before he left, and Old Dao said that he wanted to meet his mentor. After all, his mentor had held a grudge against him for 20 years, so he had to meet with him before he left. Jin Yong remarked that in 20 years of dining, his mentor could beat him up badly. Old Dao laughed and said that his mentor was not such an evil person. Dao put his hand on his shoulder and asked Jin Yong to wait here while he went to see his mentor. Dao came to his teacher's house and cheerfully announced that he had returned. But then Jin Yong heard loud screams and noise coming from the house. Jin Yong felt uncomfortable standing there and listening to his mentor curse and beat his new friend. Hearing the commotion, Yan Haiyang approached Jin Yong and asked what was going on. He replied that it was nothing special, just a friendly meeting of old friends. They resolve between themselves everything that has accumulated over 20 years of separation, so it will take some time. Jin Young looks at Yan Hyang and notices that she looks bad after meeting with Ms. Ha. Yan Hyang said that her sister Ha said she would go north with her. However, she was more concerned about her father, who remained in the association. Suddenly, the door opened in front of them and old Dao flew out of the house headlong. He got to his feet, shaking off the dust, and shouted to his mentor that he would definitely return and asked him not to get sick. The old mentor shouted that if he went to the north, he should look for his uncle, who was in a high position, and maybe he would feed him. Having spoken, the mentor forcefully closed his door in front of the beaten Tao. Jin Yong asked if old Dao could not have avoided such a fate. Dao explained that he did not know of a better way to release the anger of his old mentor. Jin Yong looked at Dao and thought that he was envious that there were people who could do something like that. Yunhyang turned to Jin Young and asked who the man was. Jin Young didn't know how to explain who the old Taoist was, so he took matters into his own hands and told her that his name was Zhongguan. He met Jin Young and decided to go north with him. The next day, they packed all the necessary things and set off. Jin Young and Zhongguan were traveling together in the same carriage while the old man was sleeping, and he was thinking over the fact that he cannot understand one simple thing about the trip. It goes without saying that Ha-gun-san accompanies them on their way north, because he needs to follow Ha-ju-ren everywhere. However, Jin Young could not understand why Tak In-ho was riding in the carriage with the women. Perhaps In-ho is going to follow Ms. Yang Hyang around. The escort from the Sea Dragon who led their escort saw something strange ahead. He waved to the rest of the convoy to stop immediately. Ha-gun-san came closer to the main escort and saw that some people he did not know were sitting on their road. Ha-gun-san noticed that they were completely blocking their way with their clothes. It looks like it was the mountain people of Chanmen, who often organize attacks on travelers. Ha-gun-san asked the commander why they had blocked their passage. The commander said that they were not their enemies because they had good relations with people from these places. The soldiers approached their captain and said they would go check what was going on. On the opposite side, mountain people were talking among themselves about two people approaching. At the order to prepare, everyone simultaneously reached for their weapons. Jin Yong was already fully prepared to engage in combat when he heard the enemy taking out their weapons. Zhongguan quickly woke up and jumped out of bed, completely confused about what was happening. Jin Yong jumped out of his carriage and approached the captain, asking him to call off the men who had gone to them as it could be a trap. The captain did not understand what kind of trap Jin Young was talking about. Ha-gun-san listened to Jin Young and told the captain that there was nothing wrong with being on the lookout, and he also asked for the scouts to return. At the moment when the captain was explaining that those people were not their enemies, the people had already begun to attack the two people, sending their souls to God. The captain realized that he had made a mistake by not listening to the two young men, but he sincerely did not understand why they did so. The opponents asked their leader what to do next. The leader ordered his men to break through the guards and eliminate the woman in the carriage. The leader drew his sword, and upon the order to move forward, his soldiers jumped to their feet and rushed to attack. Jin Young was attacked by two warriors at once, but he managed to transfer his inner energy into his fist. He managed to neutralize the enemy with a strong punch to the stomach. As the rest of the enemy soldiers ran through him to the carriages, he realized that the target of those bastards was Ms. Cho Yun-hyung. Jin Young called Selphine, who yawned and asked what he wanted from her again, because she was so happy when he didn't call her. Together with Selphina, Jin Young used the magical hand of flame technique. With the help of the spirit, their energy released a large fire tornado, stopping the enemies who were heading for the carriages and threatening the lives of those in them. Selphina yawned and asked if that was all, and Jin Young noticed that she hadn't changed at all. Jin Young listened to his own feelings and noticed that if he used basic magic, he didn't feel the urge to destroy everything around him like he did in the past. Jin Young realized what the underlying problem was, but just in case, he asked Cherutan to control his power. Meanwhile, an enemy soldier was approaching the escort commander with the sole purpose of destroying him. Dodging the attack, the commander turned to the soldiers of Chanmen. After wounding the attacker, he shouted how these mountain bastards dared to attack their allies. But instead of answering him, the enemy soldiers were approaching, swords in front of them. The commander used his speed and skill to quickly deal with the attackers with just one wave of his hand. Suddenly, a warrior named Chanmen appeared behind the commander's back and prepared to stab him in the back. However, the commander did not allow him to do so and quickly returned to him and repelled his attack. The head of the warriors, Chongmen, jumped and brought his sword over the commander. Repulsing his attacks, the commander asked why they attacked them. He did not understand how the mountain people could do such a thing. The head of the warriors, Chongmen, crossed his sword with him and replied that it did not concern him at all. The commander-in-chief filled his sword with his mana and attacked the enemy, but the enemy dodged his attack. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the head of the soldiers, Chongmen, wounded and knocked the sword out of his hands, thus leaving him unarmed. However, their fight ended there, as the head of the warriors, Chongmen, told him that they would leave as soon as they had dealt with the girl. The head of the warriors, Chanmen, smiled and added that they would leave as soon as they had eliminated all his men along with him. However, his plans were disrupted by Zhongguan, who stood between them and repelled the attack from the commander-in-chief. Zhongguan got into a fighting stance and said that it was already clear that such a psycho would not leave anyone alive. The leader of Zhongmyun looked at him and could not understand how Zhongguan managed to block his sword with just one kick. Even his hand went numb from such incredible strength, and he realized that he was facing a very strong opponent. Leader Zhongmyun decided not to retreat but to attack Zhongguan. He imbued his sword with internal energy in order to deliver a sudden and critical blow to his new enemy. However, in front of him was only a large pit with no body of his opponent, Zhongguan, who had disappeared. But as soon as the leader thought so, Zhongguan flew at him from the air with a new attack. In their duel, the initiative was on the side of Zhongguan, who struck fast and accurate blows all over the body of the Zhongmyun leader. His opponent was already boiling with anger because Zhongguan not only struck but also dodged and blocked his blows, leaving him without a chance. Leader Chanmen decided to use his trump card by giving the sword his mana. But he didn't, because Zhongguan quickly kicked him in the face. Zhongguan saw his opponent disoriented in space by his attack and mocked him, saying that he did not expect anything else from a madman. Leader Changmen found the strength to stand up, but thought that his shoulder was hurting badly. He was incredibly angry because he realized that he could not defeat Zhongguan, and he had no choice but to retreat. Jin Yong wiped his hand clean of the enemy's blood and asked to end it as soon as possible. He noticed that the furious leader Changmen was coming toward him with his sword raised and an angry expression on his face. He thought that since he had already lost to Zhongguan, he would at least eliminate the weaker opponent. However, Ji Yan intercepted his hand as it tried to strike him. Qin Yang looked at him with interest and asked who he was and where he came from. Jin Yang did not let go of the leader's hand, who could not understand how such a young man could be endowed with such incredible strength. The leader begged to let him go, explaining that he was a fortress of Baekma, threatening Jin Yang that if he broke his arm, he would be finished. The Chongmen soldiers noticed that their leader was defeated, so they shouted to each other that they were retreating. But they were too late because the Sea Dragon warriors had them surrounded. The head of the escort ordered not to let anyone go. They would have to pay for attacking the members of the association. At this time, Ms. Ha approached them and interrupted his conversation. The head of the escort reminded her that it was dangerous here, so she should go back to the carriage. Mrs. Ha assured him that everything would be fine if Du Chu Moon himself came for them. This means only one thing. These mountain bandits were sent from the fortress of Pekma. Ms. Ha addressed the warriors because they were on a mission from the mountain people of Magam, who were at odds with their trade association. She realized that they had attacked them today to eliminate her on Mangam's orders. Jin Young only now realized that the main target was not Ms. Cho Yonhyang, but her relative, Ms. Cho. Ms. Cho ordered the escort captain to release the captured soldiers. She said they should get out of here as soon as possible and take care of the wounded. Jin Young tried to understand why Ms. Ha was letting go of those who had recently tried to eliminate her. Ms. Ha explained to the commander that the soldiers wanted to retreat because Chonmyong had already suffered heavy losses because of them. Mrs. Ha stood in front of one of the soldiers and asked him to give her greetings to the lord of the fortress of Baekma. She also asked me to tell you that even though Chanmen's soldiers attacked her people, they generously spared them. The Chanmen warrior bowed his head to Ms. Ha and promised that he would tell her. Ms. Ha ordered the commander to collect the bodies and treat the wounds of the victims, after which they would continue on their way. Jin Young watched her go and thought that, judging by what she had said earlier, Baekma Fortress and Magnum would be in a very difficult situation. The soldiers will return alive because they were spared by the man they tried to eliminate. If they don't want to be criticized in the future, they will have to forget about the trade association. While Jin Young was thinking about this situation, Ms. Ha was looking at him intently. Jin Young noticed this and wondered what she had just thought about. Ms. Yonhyang got out of the carriage and looked at her sister Ha. Yonhyang asked if her sister was okay, as they had been through a difficult battle. Ms. Ha looked down and said that everything was fine, and she thought about what an interesting young man Jin Young was, and if he was capable of such a thing, she must need him. Yonhyang distracted her from her own thoughts, so Ms. Ha apologized and explained that she was thinking about her own. Ms. Ha invited Yonhyang to wait in the carriage while preparations were being made for departure. Yonhyang realized that Sister Ha was looking at Jin Young with a special look. Yonhyang used to spy on her sister Ha when she was talking to a man. Her eyes were darker than night and burned with some strange red fire. Yonhyang immediately saw something terrible in her eyes, but she didn't say anything to her. The next morning, while walking around the square, she noticed something shocking. Under the wall, the same man with whom her sister Ha had talked the day before was sitting in his own blood. Yonhyang stood there, wondering what her sister was planning to do this time. After a while, the man on the throne was angry that instead of killing the girl, the soldiers had disgraced him. The head of the Pekma fortress shouted at his subordinates that they had defamed the name of their fortress. The head of the fortress covered his face with his hand and ordered them to go and find out where the people who had so maimed their leader, Du Jongmoon, came from. However, a stout, bald man stood in front of the head of the fortress. He asked the chairman to personally take up the case. The head of the fortress asked him if he really wanted to leave because he had done a lot of stupid things that time. Nevertheless, the head of the fortress allowed him to take up the case, but ordered him not to touch the association at all, because their time had not yet come. The burly man slammed his fist on his palm and accepted the order of the head of the fortress. At the time, Tak In-ho and Ha Gun-sang were walking around the residence. Ha Gun-sang told his brother that Jin Young had amazing fighting skills. Tak In-ho grimaced and said that his skills were just a common martial art. Han Gun-sang remained standing, and Tak In-ho walked on, thinking about something else, not even noticing that he was alone. Han Gun-sang thought that if he could benefit from his strength, who cares if it was just a martial art? As the evening came, Jin Young remembered that tomorrow morning it was time to hit the road. Yan Hyang bowed to Jin Young and thanked him for his protection, because if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have been able to get out of the forest unharmed. Jin Young looked at her and asked what Ms. Yan Hyang was going to do next. Yan Hyang smiled and said that she had received a message from the chairman. In order to improve relations with the Sea Dragon Fleet, they want to connect her with young Mr. Ha Gun-san. My father refused to marry Mr. Tak, probably because of the problems Tak In-ho caused them. Yan Hyang was smiling because first they had to deal with this case. Jin Young guessed what was going on, but decided to ask her directly if her sister Ha Ju-ren had a hand in it. Yan Hyang thought that this was most likely the case, but it was only her guess. Jin Young noticed that Ms. Ha seems to have an interest in Mr. Tak, so it must be part of her plan to be with him. However, it may be something else. Miss Ha wants to make sure that no one takes anything from her. Jin Young listened to her and asked what would happen if Yan Hyang refused. Yan Hyang explained that in this case, the support for the fleet will be completed. Even if the sea dragons are on the verge of extinction, the association will not even lend them a helping hand. Jin Young said that it seems that these are dark times, but if she needs him, he will always help her. Yan Hyang smiled and raised her hands, saying that it was not necessary because she was just exhausted from everything and wanted to talk to someone. It was so strange for her, because Jin Young was not even related to her. Yan Hyang nervously crossed her arms and asked Jin Young to listen to her. After all, Yan Hyang only wanted to ask her new friend for one thing. If something happened to her or the Sea Dragon Fleet, she asked Jin Young to take care of her father. The next morning, Jin Young stood pensive, and Jungguan asked if something had happened last night and he didn't know. Today was the day when Jin Young would return to his home, but he was very depressed. Jin Young told Jungguan that he had something to think about. Ji Young would really like to help Ms. Cho Yan Hyang right now. The alliance between Ms. Cho and Ha Gun-sang to keep her around is possible, and Ha Ju-ryong may not be in a hurry to do so. Jin Young suddenly realized that she still had a little time. While he was walking and thinking about the situation with Yan Hyang, his feet led him to the gate of his home. Jungguan stood behind him and asked if this was really his house. For some time, Jin Young could not dare to go to the place where Jin Wei's soldiers had taken him as a young boy. And now he is an adult and capable man who has come a long and thorny way on the way to his main goal. Nevertheless, Jin Young gathered his courage and knocked on the gate of his home. The house asked who was there, and Jin Young told his nanny that it was him. An old nanny came to the gate and asked me to wait a little longer because she was not so young anymore. Opening the gate, the nanny looked at the men and could not understand who they were and why they had come here. Jin Young told her that it was him, and it was not surprising that she did not recognize him because so much time had passed. The nanny could not believe her eyes. She tried to see that little boy in him. Realizing that it was really him, she screamed and hugged him, still unable to believe that it was Jin Young, alive and well. The nanny held his hand and said that she was very happy that he had finally returned home. Jin Young was also touched by her kindness and warmth because for some time she had been his mother's substitute while his father was busy with his experiments. Jin Young decided to take a walk around his house, so the first thing he did was go to his father's office. Everything was still the same. Nothing has changed since then except that no one has been sitting at the desk for a long time. Jin Young touched the table as if remembering those carefree times when his father was still at home. Jin Young felt so sad because in this homely atmosphere for a while, he felt like that 8-year-old little boy again. For a while, Jin Young stood at the table, nostalgic and analyzing his life. He suddenly remembered the hidden hiding place he had found on the very day he was taken to the island. He knew that even after all these years, the nanny could never have guessed what the painting on the wall was hiding. Cherutan told Jin Young that he would have to go down to decipher the ancient writings on that stone slab. Jin Young said he would do it as soon as he rescued his father. The nanny searched everywhere and finally found Jin Young in his father's room. Jin Young told her that he had left home so long ago that he was overwhelmed with memories, and now he had to save his father as soon as possible. The nanny looked at him with sad eyes and tried to tell him that Jin Young's father disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Jin Young was cold at the nanny's words, and he didn't understand what it meant, how he could just disappear. The nanny explained that General Yuk had come to her and told her that the prison where his father was imprisoned had collapsed and that Ko Jin Hong had fallen through the ground. Jin Young's hope was sparked, and he asked if it was General Yuk that Yukdugam. The nanny also said that General Yuk came from time to time with news from Mr. Ko, so that was the only reason for her to hold on to life. The nanny still hopes that his father will return home. Jin Young wondered where his Uncle Jong was now. The nanny said in despair that his Uncle Chan had long since passed away. It happened a year ago on his way back from the Imperial Palace when he was attacked by bandits. Jin Young asked the nanny if the bandits had been caught. The nanny said that there was a commotion around the place, but it was over later. And some unknown man took the body of old Chan with him. Jin Young clenched his fists and mentally asked his father what the hell was going on here. Jin Young realized which direction he should take. He was sitting across from the man who was the key to solving the mystery of his father's disappearance. Yukdu Gang knew that Jin Young would come to see him again at some point, so he was very happy to see him. Jin Young began the conversation by telling his nanny that he became a lord after finding the thief who stole gold from the temple. Jin Young belatedly congratulated Yudugam on his promotion. He bowed and thanked the nanny for helping and supporting him during his absence. General Yuk explained that he was just telling her the location of the prisoner. He did all this because he felt very guilty towards Jin Young. General Yuk said that the most important thing is that Jin Young did come, and he probably wants to know about him. Jin Young has come about the case of his father, so he wants General Yuk to tell him what happened to him. General Yuk didn't know where to start, but first he explained that it was a very strange case. The cell where Ko was held was in a common room that could not be opened from the inside. Jin Young was getting angry at the mere suggestion that someone might have kidnapped his father. But General Yuk did not think so, because the Emperor himself personally supervised the scientist Ko, and the inspection was very strict. No one would have dared to even think about kidnapping him, and the walls of the cell were destroyed by a strong explosion from the inside. Shocked, Jin Young asked if his father had escaped from prison by breaking down the walls. General Yuk looked down and said that it seemed to him that the Emperor was as surprised then as Jin Young was now. An investigation was carried out, but after a thorough inspection of all the cameras, they were unable to find anything. General Yuk said that he personally was engaged in the search, but it did not yield any results, and he was very sorry. Jin Young understood and asked if he could also conduct his own little investigation in his father's cell. Perhaps he left something for him, and no one but Jin Young will be able to recognize it. General Yuk asked if he really thought that his father could have left something for him. Jin Young explained that his father had done this many times before he was imprisoned by the imperial government. General Yuk crossed his arms over his stomach and asked him directly if Jin Young found something, whether he would tell him about it. Jin Young said he would tell us everything, but right now it would be difficult for him to talk about it. General Yuk smiled and said that it would be difficult to convince Jin Young, but he would remember this conversation and they would definitely return to it one day. He explained that it would be problematic for Jin Young to enter the palace in person now. General Yuk was interested in one question: whether Jin Young had mastered martial arts during this time. Jin Young explained that it happened that his grandfather was a master in Changdong, and he learned a little bit of Thai. General Yuk stared at Jin Young and asked if this old man was Gu Yang. Jin Young was very surprised that the general knew his name, and that the old man was so famous. General Yuk explained that Changgundong Island was always under close army surveillance, and he knew very little about old Gu Yang. Because of the Emperor's eyes, no letter could be sent there, but General Yuk was very relieved to learn that Jin Young was under the care of old Gu Yang. Everything went well because General Yuk was happy that Jin Young had learned enough from the old man on the island. Until Jin Young completes his investigation, General Yuk will give him a high title. The general explained that he would not be able to authorize the investigation to an unknown person, as it would hurt the pride of other officials responsible for the security of the palace. But if Jin Young has a position equal to theirs, then no one will dare to say anything about it, and there will be less noise around this case. A man of the leader of the Pekma fortress was standing under the building, leaning on one of the columns. He was thinking that too much of his time was spent trying to find the whereabouts of the couple. His assistant came to him and reported that they had left the place. The man of the leader of the Pekma fortress asked where they were headed, and the assistant replied that he did not know exactly, but they went north of the fortress. The big man took the assistant by the collar and pulled him toward him. Lifting his assistant up, he shouted at him how he could not even ask which road they were on. Throwing the assistant away like an old rag, the big man ordered him to find out where they were by tomorrow if he wanted to stay alive. The servant promised to do his best. Jin Young and General Yuk made their way to the imperial palace together. General Yuk raised his finger and showed that they had come to the very place he had previously mentioned. Jin Young noticed that the hole in the wall was quite large and that the stones had indeed flown out from the inside to the outside. He suddenly wondered if his father had the strength to break even a thick stone wall. Upon entering the cell, Jin Young noticed paper sheets and books scattered on the floor. The cell itself was empty. Only a desk and a chair were present. Jin Young looked at this and asked General Yuk if it was difficult for his father to be here in such conditions. Upset, Jin Young lowered his head and said to himself that it would be much stranger if his father did not experience discomfort and difficulties in such conditions. General Yuk countered Jin Young by assuring him that this was the case at the outset. General Yuk explained that he noticed that Scientist Ko did not like his work, and that he was bullied and tortured. But after all these events, something very strange happened. Jin Young did not understand what could have happened. General Yuk admitted that for some time he even thought that Ko Jin Hong had taken over the emperor, for he found it strange that when the scholar Ko asked the emperor for something, he did absolutely everything for him. And even the fact that no one could meet with the emperor did not cause him any inconvenience. There were rumors among the people that at the request of the scientist Ko, hundreds of rare and ancient books were brought to him every 3 to 4 days. Jin Young picked up one of these books from the floor and realized that it was one of the books his father had once talked about. He also asked General Yuk if he could find out which books were delivered to his father during his stay in the Imperial Palace. General Yuk immediately realized what Jin Young was trying to find in them, but asked him directly if he thought his father might have written something important down. Jin Young flipped through page after page, answering the general that he thought his father definitely needed these books for something. General Yuk said that when the books were taken out of the palace, they were carefully checked. They needed to know if the book was dirty or torn. The guards would definitely notice if new words were written or new drawings appeared. Jin Young wondered if the emperor would ever personally conduct an inspection. After closing the book, Jin Young told the general that there are things that even 100 people will not notice. Meanwhile, in the forest, a big man stood looking off into the distance. A messenger appeared behind him with urgent news. The envoy said that the reconnaissance revealed their exact location. One of them now lives on the mountain behind the northern gate. The big man said they were going there right now, but the messenger tried to stop him by reminding him that they had not been ordered to attack them. The messenger was worried that the big man would do something without the bishop's order. But before he could finish, a huge man's fist hit him right in the stomach. He told him to know his place and not to tell him what to do, but to show him the way immediately. The messenger held his stomach and was afraid to even look at it again, so all he could do was obey his order. At the Imperial Palace, Jin Young was still conducting his little investigation, and General Yuk was wondering what he was going to do next. He also said that it was too late to go to the library to get books. Even if they went to the library, it would be closed. Jin Young still wanted to take a final look around, so General Yuk allowed him to do so, and in the meantime he went to make a report. The general also said that Jin Young's friend was waiting for him outside, so he asked him not to be late. Jin Young tried to analyze everything in a new way. Since there had already been an investigation, most of the things had probably been taken out, and what was left in the cell has no value. Jin Young looked around and realized that he didn't even see any hiding places. However, Jin Young's attention was drawn to a scroll hanging on the wall of the cell. Jin Young recognized the drawing of the dry Sikova Habal on it. He read that there was a shadow of a bird on his hand, and then another, and then there were two, and suddenly you saw the shadow of a third bird, but there were only 2 shadows. And he who seeks will always find. Jin Young tried to understand the meaning of what he had read. He even thought that this text was written by a child for a joke, but suddenly Jin Young remembered that he had heard this text before. When I was a little boy, my father told me that learning never ends. Just like those ancient scrolls his father is constantly studying. At first glance, it looks like traces left by birds or as if a child had scratched writing. But on the other hand, the human soul is directly embedded in them. Jin Young looked at the scroll and tried to understand the meaning that if you know one thing, you will know the other. But suddenly, as if on an internal impulse, he turned his head to the side and saw Jin Young. That there were many signs and text on the wall opposite the scroll that he hadn't seen before for some reason. At the end of the investigation, Jin Young met with Zhang Guan, who was angry with him because he had waited there all day. Zhang Guan suggested that they go to a tavern together, since he was obviously not going to go to bed tonight. But Jin Young walked silently, trying to analyze today's important clue. Looking at the wall at the time, Jin Young could decipher only one word, and that word was flawlessness. Jin Young had already thought of many options, but the only thing that came to mind was that it was just a simple word game. Zhang Guan noticed that Jin Young was very upset and not talking to him at all. Zhang Guan clicked his tongue and said that Jin Young was very boring for a companion. Suddenly, a huge man, unknown to them, appeared on their way. A huge man pointed his finger at them and asked if the bastards who had crippled Do Chu Mun were still alive. Zhang Guan asked him who among those he had dealt with Chu Mun was. But instead of answering, the huge man was already approaching Zhang Guan with his fists. A huge man threw Zhang Guan aside and approached Jin Young, saying that he had come to repay a debt for his friend. But Jin Young quickly and timely blocked his powerful shot. Jin Young flew to a safe distance to assess the situation, when he suddenly saw that new enemies were approaching from the roofs of the building in an attempt to attack him. However, Jin Young was more agile, so a second before the attack, he managed to jump away as the swords plunged into the spot where he had just been standing. Jin Young stared at the attackers and wondered if he had seen them somewhere. He decided to ask the two if they were from the Pekma fortress. They discussed among themselves that the commander would take over the master, and their task was to deal with this young man. Zhongguan was trying to recover from the sudden attack. He didn't even think that their conversation would start with fists. But when he looked in front of him, he saw the same enraged huge man coming at him. Zhongguan also pointed his fist and addressed him, saying that if he makes noise in the middle of the night, people will be outraged because he will disturb their sleep. The moment their fists met, an energy wave arose between them and spread over a great distance. Such a powerful blow even split the ground between them, but they both managed to stay on their feet. The huge man said he was disappointed because he never thought his friend would be defeated by a smelly old man. Zhongguan was not angry at his words, but rather amused, calling his opponent very self-confident. He stood up and said that he wanted to personally check what he was capable of. Zhongguan quickly approached the enemy and attacked him with the first powerful punch to the face, to which the huge man did the same to him in response. However, his second punch was no less powerful, right in the old man's stomach. Zhongguan again aimed at the enemy's face, but this time he failed because his arm was intercepted, and holding him by the same hand, they threw him directly on his back. Zhongguan was lying on his back, thinking of different moves and trying to come up with the right strategy, at the moment when the enemy was already standing over him, preparing to attack him with his energy fist. But the huge man did not wait and struck the old man right in the face. Suddenly, his own henchman flies at the huge man, knocking him down. Zhongguan hadn't thought through this turn of events, so he was a little shocked by the action. Jin Young approached the old man and asked if he was okay because he had trouble getting up after the previous attack. With Jin Young's help, he stood up and thanked his mentor, thanks to whom he had gotten used to frequent and severe beatings. The huge man got to his feet and said that Jin Young was quite a fast young man, because even the garbage as his assistants could not keep him in time. Jin Young decided to finally deal with the huge man, so he was the first to attack him. The huge man lost his balance for a second from Jin Young's attack, but remained on his feet. Jin Young thinks that his opponent is absolutely no different from his own men. After his words, Jin Young did not restrain himself from attacking the enemy, delivering quick and accurate blows to various parts of his body. Using his inner magic, he practiced his skills as a magical fist. The blow to the huge man was so powerful that he could not stand on his feet and flew straight into the wall of the room behind him. A confused huge man was trying to get to his feet, shaking off the stones from the half-destroyed house from his clothes. Even after such an attack, the huge man did not think of giving up. He only realized that he was dealing not with a simple young man, but with a martial arts master of his own. He hit the ground with his fist using a special technique of magic fog. But as soon as the fog cleared, Jin Young noticed that where the huge man had been, there were only ruins from the fight. Zhongguan looked at him in the same way and asked if he had run away like a coward. Cherutan turned to Jin Young and said that he was sorry that they had escaped, because he could have gotten some interesting information out of them. Jin Young thought that it was definitely the people from Baekma Fortress who had been hunting for the association all along. If they are already setting their sights on them because of this whole situation, you should hurry up immediately. The next day, as planned, Jin Young visited the library. Zhongguan also came, but he was not completely satisfied with the size and appearance of the library. Zhongguan noticed that there were many books in the library worthy of an imperial palace. Jin Young said they only had to go to one place. They went to the librarian's office, who immediately noticed the two of them and asked what they had to do with him. Jin Young explained that he had come under orders to find out some things Lord Yuk had to warn him about. The librarian rounded his eyes and asked if he was the newly arrived official, saying that he had received the order this morning. The librarian stood up and said that he had been warned that Jin Young was interested in old books that had been confiscated. He asked me to wait a bit until he and other scholars brought the same books. Later, the librarian brought a stack of books and said that these were only a third of all the ancient writings. The librarian said that as soon as they finished dealing with these books, they would bring the other half. Zhongguan looked at that mountain of books and said that he thought it would be difficult to read all those books in the library. Jin Young took the first book and said that there was nothing he could do about it, so he had to get to work as soon as possible. After some time of their work, they have already processed many books. However, when Jin Young finished and closed the next book, he covered his face with his hands because he was tired and disappointed that the book he had read was empty without the slightest clue. Zhongguan looked up from his book and asked if there was any point in rereading books if there was nothing in them anyway. Jin Young said that there is actually something in the books that has already caught his attention. However, there was nothing in the very content of the ancient books that his father could hide. On the contrary, he hid his message by using the order of the titles of the books he used most often. If Jin Young understood correctly, the father probably expected his son to find out about it when he visited the palace. The poem in his cell and the two hieroglyphs Tik and Kel, one for heaven and the other for earth, if you combine them, you get the third, his body. Jin Young was unsure of his guesses, so he decided to ask Cherutan. It turns out that his father studied the technique of absorbing the energy of heaven and earth to control the soul, and even a level higher than him. If my father had dared to study that technique with his stubbornness, he would have undoubtedly gone much deeper into it than he did. However, if my father learned it and was able to escape from the palace, why didn't he return home at least once to see his nanny? Perhaps he was afraid of the emperor's persecution. And even so, he would not have disappeared by leaving his nanny. Jin Young thought about the fact that the emperor doesn't know for sure, but the strange thing is that no one is stopping him. Even if General Yuk had given Jin Young special rights, they would still be useless in the eyes of the ruler. Jin Young could not understand why the emperor did not pay any attention to him. Jin Young, General Yuk, and Zhang Guan returned to the destroyed cell together. General Yuk asked if there was anything else to see in the detention room. Jin Young said that they had found out something at the library, but he wanted to check it again to make sure he was right. But when they entered the cell, it was completely empty from the floor to the walls. None of those present could understand how it happened that the camera was completely removed. General Yuk told Jin Young that he needed to report this to the Minister of War. Sitting at the table, they told the military minister about everything that had happened. The minister turned to Jin Young, saying that he must be the son of the very scientist Ko that General Yuk was talking about. He decided to officially introduce himself as Gun Sung-hak, the Minister of War and head of the Golden Guard. Minister Gun Sung-hak looked very closely at old Zhang Guan. Zhang Guan felt uncomfortable with the minister's gaze. Gun Sung-hak asked the audience if they had any idea who the people were who erased all the evidence in the cell. The minister suggested that it was probably the work of Wang He, who is the head of the spy squad. General Yuk explained that this is the palace's intelligence corps, which is on par with the Golden Guard, whose job is to suppress corruption and rebellion. But the nuance is that it was the Golden Guard who conducted the investigation in the detention room because it was not their competence. The minister said that there have been many strange things in the behavior of the intelligence corps recently. He told everyone that he had called them here today because he had something to say personally to the son of the scholar Ko. But before that, the minister paused for a very long time, making everyone interested. Minister Kang Seung-ga decided to put Jin Young in charge. He made this decision because no one would dare to interfere with his high rank. Jin Young wondered if everything would be okay if the minister gave him the position, and Kang Seung-gak replied that the emperor himself had approved the decision. Jin Young was impressed by his words, but he asked the minister how much he had heard about him from General Yuk. Kang Seung-ga replied that Jin Young's father was imprisoned, and his very young boy was sent to Cheonggundong. In this case, Jin Young wanted to ask the minister whether His Majesty the Emperor had imprisoned his father and sent him into exile. How the emperor could leave him unattended in the palace under such circumstances, and why he was given the position of governor, these questions haunted Jin Young. To begin with, the minister told Jin Young that the emperor he knew was not in his place, that the crown prince was now on the throne and in charge of the situation. Jin Young wondered where the emperor was now. The minister replied that they did not know, but based on their investigations. The emperor seems to have gone to Jiangsu and is not going to return. Jin Young didn't understand how it was possible to go to an imaginary land and not return. But the minister assured Jin Young that it was quite real, how he could have deceived the imperial family, and why no one could find him alive or not, no one knows. There is information that one clan has contacted the emperor, but this is not confirmed information. It is a shadowy clan, so there was very little information. Jin Young did not understand which clan the minister was talking about. The Heavenly Blood clan is little known in Jianghu, but they were interested in the gold plates and stone tablets that the emperor was trying to decipher. Jin Young thought that the emperor wanted to decipher the ancient writings that he had his father interpret. In addition, a shadowy bloody clan has taken an interest in all this. The clan from Jianghu has become close to the ruler in order to solve the mystery of the gold plates and stone tablets. When the emperor gained power to quench his greed, he traveled to Jianghu with representatives of the clan. The minister said that this is how things are with His Majesty, but there is another reason why he gave him this position. Gun Sung-gak sends Jin Young to Jiangsu to find out what the members of the intelligence corps are up to, which is why he was given this position. For some reason, Jin Young decided to ask if he was really being given this position to keep an eye on the intelligence corps. The minister explained that at the cost of the life of one guardsman, they managed to obtain some information. They are hiding something by sending craftsmen under the guise of supervising Jianghu. They are also very afraid that their secret will be revealed, and they hide it so much that they are even ready to bury it. The minister cannot leave everything as it is, otherwise there will be complete chaos in the management dynasty. In addition, this case was directly related to Jin Young. Namely, the emperor is afraid of what his father was involved in. General Yuk got up from his seat and said it was time for them to leave. Zhang Guan turned away from everyone and thought about something of his own. However, Zhang Guan decided not to think and asked directly if they had met the military minister before. The minister was furious because he realized that Zhang Guan was not joking when he said he did not know him. Zhang Guan was completely shocked and asked if they really knew each other because he couldn't remember. The minister shouted at him so hard that saliva was flying out of his mouth, calling him stupid because he did not even recognize his relative. Zhongguan realized that he had heard the name before, but he didn't think it was his relative. The minister held his head and ordered the two to leave because they needed to talk in private. Jin Yong bowed to the minister and said it was time for them to leave. Zhongguan was afraid to be alone with his relative, so he begged Jin Yong not to go, but he just waved his hand and closed the door. Outside, General Yuk was waiting for Jin Yong, and he had something to say to him. General Yuk said that he did not think that Jin Yong's friend would be a relative of the Minister of War. Jin Young replied that he had heard that his relative held a high position, but he had no idea that it was so high. On his way out of the residence, the minister caught up with Jin Young and asked him to take something. It was a scroll with a message that had to be passed to one person. Jin Young took the scroll and asked the minister who should receive it. The minister explained that he was going to receive his old friend, whom he had not seen for about 20 years, and he had heard that he was alive and well. But there are few smart people like his friend in this world. If he can find and give him the letter, his friend will be able to help him. The minister said that people in Jiangsu call his friend Nu Xin Guan a hermit. He said that a year ago he lived on Mount Mudan, and if his judgment is correct, his friend is still there. Jin Young put the scroll in his pocket and said that he had heard about the hermits, but would it help him? The minister looked Jin Young in the eye and said that he would have no choice but to help him in this. He personally swears. Jin Young walked out of the temporary shelter and stared at the distance in front of him. Cheritan reminded him that they had a long way to go tomorrow, so it would be better if Jin Young got some rest. Jin Young explained that he felt a little uncomfortable not to act like this. The next morning, Jin Young looked at an interesting picture of the minister still punishing his relative Zhongguan, but someone approached him and said that there were rumors that he had joined the Golden Guard, so it seems that he is very busy now. It was Ha Gunsang who was waving to him, saying that it was not easy to find the place where Mr. Ko was staying. Jin Young asked because he couldn't understand why Mr. Ha Gunsang was looking for him. Ha Gunsang raised his hands in the air, assuring me that I shouldn't be so afraid because he had come just to talk. He also said that he had come secretly from his sister, so you shouldn't worry so much. Jin Young said they weren't even close enough to talk like that, so he asked what kind of business he was doing here, since he had come here secretly from his sister. Ha Gunsang asked directly if Jin Young had heard of the Heavenly Blood Clan in Jiangsu. Jin Young stood there and just looked at Mr. Ha, saying that this was the first time he had heard of it. Ha Gunsang said that in that case, it was better to get straight to the point because his brother and sister were involved. Namely, Ha Gun-seok and Ha Ju-ren secretly decided to do something terrible together, namely to conclude an agreement between them and the Heavenly Blood Clan. They are going to invest an absurd amount of money in a ghostly clan that no one even knows in Jianghu. If something goes wrong, it will not only have a major impact on the association, but also harm the Heavenly Dragon Fleet. Ha Gunsang doesn't know what kind of organization it is, but if those two are interested in this topic, they shouldn't ignore this fact. Jin Young listened carefully to Ha Gun-san and asked him why he was telling him all this. Ha Gun-san shrugged and laughed, for there was no particular reason for it. He just thought it would be nice to make friends with Mr. Ko Jin Young. After a while, Jin Young stood in the forest and said that he did not know what the people from the association were aiming for, and no one knew what was going on in that snake's den. Jin Young turned to the man and asked him if he agreed with what he said. The same martial arts master from the Pekma fortress stood silently looking at him. Jin Young noticed that he didn't even try to hide his presence, so he wondered what he was up to this time. The master of the Pekma fortress replied menacingly that he was not the kind of person who should hide. The master pointed his finger at Jin Young and said he was going to overpower him and take him with him, and he thought to himself that he had violated an order to simply follow him. After the warden was spotted leaving alone, it was a face-to-face meeting. The master took a fighting stance and thought that he had no other choice but to catch this young man. Jin Young looked at the master skeptically and asked if he didn't need a beating next time. The master of the fortress, Bekma, became energized and answered Jin Young with a refusal. He approached Jin Young with his fist raised near his face and told him that this time everything would be different. Jin Young dodged the master's attack at the same moment he began to release his own energy. Having accumulated enough energy, Jin Young attacked the master, but the latter blocked his blow with his hand. In turn, the master of the Bekma fortress struck Jin Young in the stomach. After flying a few meters, Jin Young stopped, but the flying master was already preparing to strike again with his fist. Jin Young jumped back and decided to use retreat tactics to think about strategy. But the master of the Bekma fortress was agile, so he easily grabbed Jin Young by the collar and lifted him up. A second later, Jin Young flew with all his might into a tree, breaking it into 2 pieces and falling unconscious. However, the master of the Bekma fortress did not have time to enjoy his triumph because Jin Young put many magical traps on his body. Sharp tips and chains began to emerge from the master's body and ran all over his body. Iron chains chained him to the nearest trees, preventing him from making the slightest attempt to move. Jin Yong's strategy paid off because the master was panicking because he couldn't move, so he broke the illusion of imprisonment. Jin Yong approached the master and said that he would like to ask him a few questions. The master of the Baekma fortress looked at the young man with hatred and asked if Jin Young really thought that he would fall at his feet so easily. Jin Young decided to show the master what position he was in, so he kicked him and stood on top of his stomach. He cannot be so lenient as to give mercy, but if possible, he should answer questions as honestly as possible. Zhongguan wondered what had happened at dawn today, and why they should follow the master of the Baekma fortress. Jin Young replied to Zhongguan that he would lead them to the fortress of Baekma. Zhongguan asked why, and Jin Yong laughed and said that they had just had a heart-to-heart and that he thought he had changed his mind. Jin Yong smilingly asked the master of the Baekma fortress if he had said everything correctly, but he just kept his cool and did not say a word. Suddenly, something caught the martial artist's attention. He told his fellow travelers that there seemed to be some kind of unpleasant clash. Zhongguan approached the body of one of the soldiers and realized that it had been about an hour since they died, and the body was too clean for those who had fought. Judging by their clothes, they were ordinary soldiers, and the master, examining their weapons, said that he thought they were Peng soldiers. The master of the Baekma fortress showed them the sword and said that he thought so because of it. This Hong Yuhan sword is the same sword that is the symbol of Peng. Judging by the clean blade, they were attacked suddenly and did not even have time to use their weapons. Zhongguan said that if these are Peng soldiers, they are strong people known all over the world, and they could not be defeated so that they could not strike back. Jin Yong said that if you go through the mountain ranges, you can meet the followers of the Path of Liberation, and if you tell them, they will take care of the bodies of Peng's people. Suddenly, Jin Yong felt a strong alien presence right next to him. However, when he turned around, he saw no one at all, only the landscape of the forest that stood before him. Zhongguan noticed that Jin Young was very worried and asked him what was wrong, to which he said that someone was obviously following them. The master of the Baekma fortress theorized that it could be some criminal watching nearby. Jin Young assured him that this was not the case, as he felt no anger, so they should leave immediately. An unknown man stood in the place where they had recently conducted their investigation and looked at the overturned carriage. The man was asked if he had found anything, and he answered, which was a little too late because their target of pursuit had already destroyed Peng's soldiers and disappeared in an unknown direction. He was thinking that he needed to develop a new plan, and the other man's task was to report it to their lord. And he, in turn, is going to continue to pursue Yom. He was left alone and thought about how Jin Young had noticed him from such a long distance. The man thought about whether he should involve Jin Young in his business. After a while, the furious chairman slammed his fist on the table and asked who dared to ignore them and destroy the Peng members. The chairman was furious and demanded to know more about the unfortunate incident. The subject said that the news was reported by a man named Ko Jin Yong, who found the broken carriage while traveling from north to south. He also said that no one survived, and that the followers of the Path of Liberation called him a state official. However, the people in civilian clothes did not want to reveal their identities, and the followers were unable to find out more information. The second man asked if those people had said anything about the object. He sadly bowed his head and said that no one had said anything about the subject. What was the likelihood that the people who reported the news had noticed the bodies? And he was told that they did not have an answer to this question at the moment. The chairman stood up and decided to personally leave with him, and only the fourth and fifth would go, while the rest would wait for his orders. The advisors jumped up and assured the chairman that there was no need to act personally. The chairman said that his brother and nephew had taken their own lives. He had lost the Hoga children, and even the subject matter, so he had to act alone. However, his uncle came into the room and told the chairman that for him he was just a younger brother, but for him personally, he was a son. Therefore, it was he who should go. The old uncle reminded him that the head of the house had a duty to protect his family. My head was already covered with sweat from my uncle's words, so I just stood there with my mouth open. Perhaps this will be his last hike before he goes to the next world, so the old man asks his nephew for permission. The chairman agreed, but asked to bring people with him. Meanwhile, a small group of people led by the master of the Baekma fortress was passing through the dense forest. However, they were closely watched by other people's inquisitive eyes almost from the top of the tree. Suddenly, the man on the top of the tree became worried for some reason. He was looking at two people and could not understand where the third one had gone, because he was keeping his eyes on their group. Too late, however, the man felt Jin Young's presence right behind him. He half turned around and asked Jin Young at what point he had ended up there. But before he could finish his question, Jin Young had already grabbed him by the throat and rushed down with him. A loud noise was heard behind the fortress master Baekma and Zhongguan, and they turned around in complete confusion. The mysterious man got to his feet and said that, as he thought, he had been spotted. Jin Young said that he could feel the signs of someone else's presence and wondered why he was following them. The mysterious man said that he would not go around in circles, but would ask directly if Jin Young would do something with him, as he thought it would be of interest to him as well. He continued that those who had destroyed the Peng warriors they had recently seen were Yoma, the third of the exorcists of Hell. Jin Young said that exorcism masters hadn't disappeared 20 years ago, and why he thought he might be interested in this case. The mysterious man said he knew that Jin Young was looking for the Heavenly Blood Clan for some reason. The exorcists of Hell are the people of the Heavenly Blood Clan, and the mysterious man hoped that at least now he was interested in Jin Young. 3 exorcists who were hiding at one point suddenly appeared at the same time. The mysterious man pointed to himself, saying that he was following Yoma Jin Young for the Heavenly Blood Clan. So he asks Jin Young one more time if he would like to do one small task with him. Jin Young exhaled and asked if he could at least find out his name. Wijin Hong said his name and Jin Young said they had to go to a place, it wouldn't take long so he could wait. Wijin Hong said yes, so they went about their business in the old group. Meanwhile, the old man was sitting and thinking before starting the hike. One of the soldiers said that they found the man 2 hours ago. He was walking with the commander of Pekma. The old man said that they were probably heading to the Pekma fortress. The old man became more serious and ordered his soldiers to hurry. Nevertheless, Jin Young decided to join the group of Wijin Hong, whom his friends in Jiangsu called the Sword of the Black Abyss. Jin Young said that this was the first time he had heard of it, and Zhongguan had never heard of the name either. Wijin Hong was embarrassed by this and said that he felt strange after their words. Only Master Pekma looked at it and thought it was the Black Abyss Sword of the 8 main stars. An old man and his soldiers came to their place of residence. Jin Young noticed them and became alert, and Wijin Hong's face changed. One of the old soldiers shouted to him that it looked like they had finally found them. Wijin Hong asked the old man if he was not the Master Peng Hong of the Peng family. Wijin Hong said he was surprised to see that Ban himself had come to them personally. Ban Ki-moon asked Wijin Hong who he was and what he was like. The master of the Pina fortress followed him as he said that he was the Wijin Hong known as the Sword of the Black Abyss. He had heard that the masters of the 8 main stars were as good as people from the major factions in their skills, so what brought him here? Wijin Hong replied that he just had one thing to do and was also curious why he personally had to go through such a difficult journey. Pungi Hong approached Jin Young and said that he had business with this man and was looking for him. He asked the young man if he was Ko Jin Young, but first, Pungi Hong wanted to express his gratitude for passing on the news about his family. Thanks to Jin Young, they were able to start the investigation in time. Since the gratitude was over, it was time to get down to business, and they came to find out some information. Ban needs to know if Jin Young saw the perpetrators of the crime or if he found any traces of their crime. Jin Young explained that the 3 of them checked everything, but saw nothing at all. Peng Hoon said he had heard that Jin Young was a government official. Jin Young was surprised and said that this was not expected, and asked what Peng Hyun wanted to know from him. He had many questions about whether he had really seen anything and why an official would go to the fortress of Bekma, and what his connection to Wijin Hong was. Jin Young listened to these direct questions and replied that it would be difficult to answer them right away. But for some reason, Peng Yong-hong slowly reached back and pulled out his sword. Jin Young and Zhong Guan were alarmed and wondered what the hell it meant. Ban stood up and said that this was the best way to have an honest and open conversation. Jin Young didn't mind, but he knew that competing with old people didn't end well. Wijin Hong did not know the level of his skill, so he said that the man was close to the masters of 10,000, and he would rather not play with him. Jin Young said that this was his chance to find out how strong the masters in Jiangsu are, and if he is close to the masters, he will be able to test his own strength. When attacking Jin Young, Peng Hyun called him a fearless kid. While Peng Hong attacked with a sword, Jin Young fought back with his bare hands, relying on his own strength and knowledge. Peng Hong attacked Jin Young, but the young man skillfully repelled his attacks. Peng Ho thought that despite using all his skills, Jin Young continued to block his punches with his bare hands. So I decided that I had come to use my trump card, which would definitely knock the enemy down. Jin Young realized what was about to happen and was even a little scared for a minute. Peng Hong used the powerful lightning sword technique. Jin Young managed to avoid a direct attack by dodging a punch. Now Jin Young switched to the defense and began to use magic techniques and abilities as well. Young Guan said that it was the first time he had ever seen Jin Young fight like that. He had amazing abilities. Wijin Hong also thought that Jin Young was an extraordinary person to be able to resist Peng Yong himself. Cherutan helped with hints to be careful because an incredible flow of magic circulates through the old man's sword, and one mistake, and he would be split in two. Jin Young threw a ball of fiery energy at Peng Hong. The old man barely dodged such a sudden attack and was knocked out. Peng Hong stopped and told Jin Young to be ready if he was going to continue fighting. At that moment, Jin Young had just tasted the magic glow. Peng Hong and Jin Yeon attacked each other at the same time, so only white and red glow was visible from the outside. Jin Young cleared his throat and thought that this was indeed the skill of the one who was closest to the masters of the 10,000. Peng Hong was impressed by Jin Young's skills and praised how skillfully he mastered his knowledge. Moreover, he could still stand on his feet despite direct attacks. Ban wondered what else he could do to get straight answers from the young man. Ban was told that no one should know about this conversation, and that he had no right to make any decisions on his own if no one knew about it. Only then would he get answers. These were the minimum conditions because this story was not a pleasant one for everyone to know about. The leader of the Pekma fortress stood upright and looked somewhere in front of him. Ji Yeon and his small team reached the goal and stood at the foot of the Pekma fortress. The servant got down on one knee and offered him to deal with the unknown guests if he wished, but the leader of the fortress just told them not to touch them, because this team was too strong for them anyway. They sat down at the table and the leader told Master Peng that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, to which he replied that it had been 15 years since the leader had quarreled with Hyun Gong-hu. The leader of the fortress said that he would never forget their help in those days. It was the first and last time he received help from Master Peng. Then he turned to Jin Yong and told him that he was very glad to meet him, and that he had guessed that he had some business with him. After all, Jin Yong is from the Golden Guard, to which the young man only said that he was correct. Jin Yong said that he would like to see the owner of the fortress because of the betrayal incident that occurred recently in the palace. He knew that the owner of the fortress had many connections with groups of dark warriors scattered around the world. The spy squads are now operating in secret, and he has come across information that they are related to the Jiangsu soldiers and that there are members of the attack organization among them. Jin Young would like to know more about who they are meeting and who they are connected to. The owner of the fortress doesn't think he can help him with this, especially since they have to fulfill requests that don't even benefit them. After all, they have already attacked their organization twice and tried to cause them trouble. Jin Yong explained that the association's affairs are not in their competence, and at least he will try to forget about the incident with the double attack on him personally. The owner of the Pekma fortress asked what would happen if he refused their request. Jin Yong said that he was also not happy to shake hands with people like him, because it is the Pekma fortress that has links to criminals. He had no choice but to turn to him if they could not resolve the matter through dialogue. As usual, they would have to use force. Master Peng decided to intervene and advise the owner of the fortress that if Jin Young starts raging here, he will cause a lot of damage. It would be better for Pek to accept their offer, and the old man can assure them of this as he has encountered this young man many times before. The owner of the fortress thought about his words, so he turned to Jin Yong and praised his martial arts skills. Nevertheless, without hesitation, the owner of the fortress, Bekma, decided to accept Jin Yeon's offer. Jin Yong also asked for an investigation into the murder of Jong Sang-hyun, a former advisor to the palace destroyed 3 years ago on the main street of Beijing. The owner of the Pekma fortress asked, since this situation happened in Beijing, whether the Golden Guard should know more about it. Jin Yong explained that the investigation by the Golden Guard and a detachment of spies recorded that he had given up his soul to God after beating a drunkard. But Jin Yong couldn't believe it. It was obvious that someone was deliberately hiding the truth. After the negotiations were over, they all went out to the courtyard near the palace, and the owner of the Pekma fortress remained to see them off with his eyes only. Suddenly, a man named Nakange appeared in front of them and greeted Commander Vijin-hon, who asked if they had managed to find out Yoma's whereabouts. The messenger said that 3 exorcists from Hell had crossed the Tuan and were approaching Mount Cheonamsan. Vijin-hong wondered if there were 3 others in Cheonamsan with Yoma and why they were all gathering in the same place. Perhaps it had something to do with the man from the Ten Swords sect. Master Peng asked if Yu Tae-chong of the Ten Swordsmen sect was really the person in Cheonamsan. Vijin-hong asked how many soldiers were on the side of Mount Cheonamsan, and the messenger said that about 5 or 7 were on their tail. Vijin-hong said that they would also immediately go towards Mount Cheonamsan and asked to send a letter to the unit and find out the situation. He realized that they should hurry up and move toward the mountain right now. At that time, the subjects reported that Jong Jae-sung was moving secretly. One man asked why they were pretending to be so noble, and decided to act in secret. A high-ranking man said that Gu Yang Mugen's men were persecuting the exorcists of Hell. The second man asked if he thought they were pursuing some personal goal. A high-ranking man said that they cannot know what is going on far away. Perhaps they are chasing exorcists for the sake of justice or ambition. The second counselor asked if they would just look at it, and he replied that they would not. A senior official said that it was obvious that they would wander all over the world to get to them, and they would be just spectators. After all, they gathered to manage the world situation, not to applaud while watching others perform. The high-ranking man voiced his plan as they chase the exorcists. Hell, they will chase them. The exorcists of Hell are not what they used to be. They have become much stronger and do not act independently because they are clearly backed by someone bigger than them. The advisor wondered if there were other groups capable of dealing with them. The high-ranking man asked the counselor if he had heard anything about the Heavenly Blood Clan. They are not widely known in the Jiangsu world, but they are said to have outstanding power. The high-ranking man clenched his fist and said that they would follow them and reap the rewards. The second counselor said that they would take the glory by getting rid of the Hell exorcists, who are a major pain in Jiangsu. The high-ranking man said that Yong Jae-sung's position would also be weakened, and if they benefited from it, it would be better for them. The counselor thought about it and asked if he meant to say that they would kill two birds with one stone, and that they only needed to follow Bishop Gu Yang's plan. The second advisor also liked the plan, but he wondered who he was going to send there. The senior official said it was a great opportunity to test their special warriors. The advisors were shocked by this decision, worried that it was too early, but they were assured that if they kept them inside, they would not be able to see the limits of their capabilities. This is a good opportunity to test them in real combat, and it doesn't come around that often. In addition, the support team will follow them, so they don't have to worry about anything happening. The high-ranking man said that they would send one squad to start with and then act according to the situation. When the advisors supported and agreed with his decision, the high-ranking man ordered everyone to go to Shanxi. Jin Yong's group arrived at the scene, but all the latecomers were eliminated before they arrived. Wei Jinhong, checking the pulse of one of the soldiers, said that it was very similar to Yoma's tricks. Jin Young urgently ordered Selphine to look for people in the mountains ahead. Then he turned to Cherutan, saying that if there is energy that he somehow does not feel, he must find it. Wei Jinhong said that unfortunately the person who was killed was the one who could lead them to the mountains, and the situation was becoming difficult because they could not comb all these mountains, so they would have to move on their own. Jin Young told everyone that he had decided to move to the front and that the others would follow him. Meanwhile, in the forest, the leader of the exorcists was committing bloody murder on everyone who came across his path. He was holding two swords soaked in blood and incredibly dark energy. He marched forward, leaving behind only the bloodied bodies of ordinary soldiers, and his men brutally dealt with those who had not yet been killed by their leader. Suddenly, a green arrow of unknown energy appeared right in front of their leader. Selphina fired her magic arrows at him, which he successfully blocked. Jin Young suggested that she call this technique Muanxi. The bloody leader of the exorcists looked in the direction from which the arrows were fired and wondered how such a huge amount of energy could come from such a great distance. Distracted by Selphina, the bloody leader did not notice how Wei Jinhong rushed at him with a sudden attack. Master Peng appeared to help Wei Jinhong with his lightning sword. The bloody leader did not expect this turn of events, especially since he is attacked by a lightning strike. Master Peng struck him with a powerful blow, but the leader of the exorcists restrained his powerful energy with his swords. He managed to repel the attack of Master Peng, who was very surprised that he managed to repel and withstand a direct attack of lightning energy. Master Peng told him that there were rumors that the exorcists of Hell were not as weak as they used to be. Their fight continued, with Master Peng striking and the leader of the exorcists successfully repelling them with his swords. Master Pan impregnated his sword with energy and asked if he would have enough strength to escape with the stolen object. Jin Young fought off the exorcist's attacks and watched them fight, seeing once again how incredibly strong Master Peng's internal energy was. If Master Peng is close in strength to the 10,000 masters, then it is even scary to imagine how strong the real 10,000 masters are. Wei Jinhong's men told their leader that they should quickly deal with the exorcists and move on. After all, inside Elder Yu is confronting most of Yoma's group alone. Jin Young wondered if the master from the 10 Swordsman sect and Yoma were the same, or if the aura that kept distracting his attention could be from those two. Jin Young told Wei Jinhyun that he would go first, which he asked if he didn't mind taking care of everything there. Jin Young asked Master Peng, but he had heard everything himself, so he told him he could go alone for now. After all, opposite them stood a strong opponent, the leader of the exorcists, with whom it would be good to deal first. Master Peng said he would follow him right after that. Zhongguan held Jin Young's shoulder, assuring him that Master Peng was enough, and offered to go with him. In another place, the attack of the exorcists was repelled by a man, Yu Taiqian, in a white suit. His movements were quick and precise, and the energy that surrounded him was the same white color as he was. He fought off the attacks and thought that if this fight had taken place earlier, even all 9 of them would not have been rivals for him. He did not expect it. That even 5 opponents would be too many for him was his own shame, and even more so because he was disgracing the sect of the 10 Swordsmen. Then Yoma entered the battle, his green energy brightly illuminating and enveloping his body. Yoma approached and attacked Yu Tae-chan's husband directly in the face, saying that he plans to take his head today as a long-awaited trophy. Yu Tae-chong said to Yoma that he hadn't been able to catch him on his own until now, but he was a little stronger and now dared to open his mouth. Even if Yu Tae-chong is destined to give his soul to God today, he will definitely take all these scoundrels with him. As he imbued his sword with his own energy, he was already mentally imagining the pleasure he would get from destroying these bastards. When the sword absorbed his inner energy, Yu Tae-chong activated it with a piercing blade spell. The sword blow was so strong that it threw the enemy back and lit up everything behind him. The next technique used by Yu Tae-chong was a powerful heavenly dragon strike. Such a blow neutralized 3 enemies attacking simultaneously in one fell swoop. But when Yoma stopped to catch his breath, he took advantage of this opportunity and attacked him with his magic fist. Yu Tae-chong managed to dodge his direct attack at the last moment by smiling at him. Jin Young realized that Yu Tae-chong was on the verge of exhaustion, so he called Selphine and her magic arrows for help. The exorcist stopped for a minute and could not understand what was happening. He thought that some wind must have blown, but then he felt a strange energy and realized that he was being attacked by some mysterious creature that his eyes could not see, so he decided to attack it with his own energy. But it was pointless to release the energy anywhere, so the exorcist stopped to assess the situation. Selphina shot arrows at him and wondered why they didn't work. Yu Tae-jung was the only one who noticed this incredible otherworldly energy. At that time, Jin Young asked him if he was really the same master from the Ten Swordsman sect. Approaching him, Jin Young explained that he had been sent by Commander Wee Jin-hong. Jin Young also asked Yu Tae-jung to leave his opponent Yim to him and his team. As Yoma prepared for the battle, he wondered if he could not have dodged the attack because his body was hurting, but the injuries were not serious. He looked at Yu Tae-chong and saw that he was also exhausted, yet Yoma hoped to eliminate him today. Jin Young wasted no time in rushing at him with a new attack, which he in turn blocked. Yoma told Jin Young that he had made all his plans go awry. One of the exorcists saw that Yoma was in danger and rushed to his defense. His plans were ruined by Yongguan, who came at him with a sudden and quick kick to the body. Yongguan drew the exorcist's attention and told him that he would now have fun with him. Meanwhile, Selphine was distracting the exorcist, who was still repelling her magical attacks and couldn't understand where they were coming from. Selphina knew that ordinary people who did not contract with magical entities would not be able to see them. Receiving magical powers from her master, Selphina will definitely not get exhausted, so she stretched her body before switching the energy flow. Selphina decided to use Jin Young's magic to the fullest today. Jin Young immediately felt the drain of his energy, and in this state it would be difficult for him to maintain his fighting techniques. He thought about Selphina, who on ordinary days does nothing but complain. Does she think that since it's not her power, she can throw it away so easily? Still, Jin Young was relieved that his opponent was exhausted because he had suffered an internal injury with the master of the Ten Swordsman sect. Jin Young realized that he had to finish off Yoma before he fully recovered, and even the strongest man could not cope with a full hit. But even when dodging, the enemy will feel the force of the blow. The technique of high defense itself is not able to repel the sword and is useless in such a situation. It feels as if the veins inside are twisting from the blows Yoma is facing this kind of attack for the first time. Yoma thought that if he had more inner strength, he would not have had to suffer so much. His target was Yu Tae-chong, and he could not stay there for long until he finished him off. It was a pity to lose his comrades, but it was not a problem to recruit new ones. Yoma knew that he had to stop Jin Young and get out of there, but he still had to try to do it. Jin Young was throwing serious blows that Yoma could hardly dodge. Yoma was running out of time, especially since when Yu Tae-jong regained his strength, he would definitely join the battle. Yoma decided to end both of them, so he used the ghostly green river technique. Jin Young managed to break through his magical green wall with his magic flame technique, but when he came closer to Yoma, he struck him with a magical fist right in the heart. From such a powerful blow, Yoma flew into a rock, unable to even resist Jin Young. Jin Young said that he realized what abilities had exhausted the master, because even in such an exhausted state, it is not easy to cope. Jin Young imagined their battle if they were on equal terms. But suddenly, Jin Young fell to his knees exhausted, unable to even stand up. He felt all his inner strength disappear in an instant. Jin Young looked at the happy Selphina, who was throwing her magic arrows in different directions without even thinking that she was hurting her master. It seems that Selphina does not know the boundaries of what is normal and what is too much. Cherutan urged Jin Young to be careful, just as Yoma suddenly stood up. Exhausted, Jin Young held his wounded shoulder and wondered how Yoma had the strength to stand up again. But Yoma was too seriously injured, and he knew that in his condition he would not be able to get far from Yu Tae-chong because he would be caught immediately. He took Jin Young by the throat and decided that it was better to destroy him. Picking up Jin Young and then quickly putting him to the ground, Yoma mocked the exhausted young man. Jin Young told Yomi that it was the first time he had seen such skills. Although only a small part of the internal energy was used, it was restored. Yoma said that Jin Young's internal injuries also look serious, so if he fills his veins with his energy right now, they will burst. Still holding Jin Young by the throat, Yoma said that since he had already failed, he would at least destroy a bastard like him. Jin Young lay there exhausted, trying to resist, but it was hard for him to even move his fingers. Cherutan told Jin Young that there was another way to destroy him if he used the energy absorption of the heaven and earth to control the soul. The spirit did not understand why he was still hesitating, because this option was better than giving up his soul to God right now. Jin Young nevertheless decided to listen to Cherutan, so he grabbed Yoma's hand with both hands. The self-confident Yoma was nervous because he was afraid of what was in front of him. Instead of Jin Young's face, he saw a stone head of a terrible ancient demon. Without wasting any time, Jin Young began to take away his inner energy, which made Yoma scream in a voice that was not his own. Yoma begged him to let go, but Jin Young held his arm so tightly that he simply had no chance. But then the screams ended along with Yoma's life, and Jin Young was still holding his hand. All that remained of Yoma was his body, from which all life was sucked out at once, leaving a dry and empty shell. Jin Young stood on his feet again, but he was not happy because he realized what he had done. Everything got out of his control when he was possessed by an otherworldly dark energy. Meanwhile, Selphina realized that her master's magical powers had simply disappeared in an instant. She was sorry because a little more time and Selphina would have finished with that exorcist. Selphina wondered if she had been having so much fun for so long, but she reassured herself that she could not know when her master's powers would disappear. Disappearing into thin air, she finally said that it was great fun for her to warm up again after all these years. The incredibly exhausted exorcist was catching his breath and wondering what the hell was going on. Jin Young, meanwhile, once again joined the battle with the Helchel escorts. Under the influence of otherworldly dark energy, he dealt with every enemy that came his way. Yu Taejong stood back and watched Jin Young, not understanding what had happened. It seemed to him that Jin Young was fighting with only his inner strength, but for some reason his gaze changed and his energy began to grow. Suddenly, an incredible thought crept into Yu Taechan's head. Is it possible? That young man turned the martial art of Yoma into pure power, assimilating it to the fullest extent and using it in his own martial art. Jin Young seemed to be invincible now, because only his energy could break the swords of the exorcists. Jin Young was at the mercy of the darkness that demanded more and more blood. Approaching the exorcist who was already anticipating the beginning of his end, Jin Young grabbed his heart in one motion, feeling its warmth in his hands. The moment the exorcist fell to the ground, Jin Young felt an icy and sharp sensation deep in his head. And after that, an indescribable disgust that Jin Young could only realize later because he personally never wanted this. Later, left alone, Jin Young sat on a rock and Cheritan told him that his inner energy had become very strong, but most of it was dark. In addition, Jin Young absorbed the souls of 2 people, so most of the energy was used to unlock the energy of the artifact. Therefore, it had nothing to do with Jin Young's pure will. Cheritan came close to his ear and said that nevertheless he felt that half of the power had already been revealed. Jin Young looked at him seriously and asked if Cheritan was hiding anything from him. Cheritan became nervous and answered him uncertainly that he was not hiding anything. Jin Young understood everything himself, so he didn't insist on telling the truth. Wijinhan approached Yu Taejong, asking his elder if he was okay. Master Peng apologized to Jin Young for letting the 2 exorcists in. Yu Taejong turned to Master Peng and told him that they had not seen each other for a long time. Master Peng said he didn't think he would see Brother Yu again, because if it weren't for his work, he would have drunk with him for 3 days and 3 nights. Yu Taechong noticed that he still liked alcohol, but he wondered why Master Peng had come in person. Master Peng said that he came here to take revenge on those who had killed his son and his family's people, and he learned that Yoma and his men were here. Yu Taejong said that he was eliminated by that young man Jin Young. Master Pan was surprised by this news and was sorry that he could not pay back his enemy personally. Nevertheless, it brought Master Pen joy that he was able to find the very object he had been looking for so long. Yu Taechong said he knew why the Peng family needed the ruby, but Master Peng assured me that it was not a simple ruby, but a gem of fire. Yu Taechong was surprised because if it was really him, there should be a flame pattern in the middle of it, but there was not. Master Peng agreed with Master Yu's words and said only that in that case it was the wrong stone. Perhaps they had received the wrong object from the Ho family. Yu Taehong wondered if this meant that they wanted to make their Peng family their enemies. It was a difficult situation because the life of one person depended on these stones. Yu Taejong said that there was no other way out but to go to the Ho family, and that empty thinking would not solve the problem. And for starters, it would be nice to focus on the exorcists of Hell. Wei Jinhong asked Yu Taejong why they should not hand over the captured exorcists to them. Jin Yang said that he should first find out something from the polled man, to which Wei Jinhong said that it would be better to interrogate him in their fortress. Jin Yang said that sending him to his fortress would take a long time. It would be better to interrogate him here and now. Wei Jinhong agreed with him because after all Jin Yang had caught the exorcist. However, if there is no result from the interrogation, they will take him to their fortress and entrust him to a professional. Then they decided to interrogate the exorcist right now. However, only the ropes used to tie him up remained in the place where the captured exorcist was sitting. The exorcist who managed to escape met in the forest with his people who managed to escape. The wounded exorcists asked him what was happening there and whether Brother Yomi had succeeded in destroying Yu Taichan. He told them that their plan had failed because they had been interrupted by a strange guy who had suddenly appeared and killed almost all of their men. The exorcist explained that Sanhel and his brother Yoma had been eliminated and that only the 3 of them were left alive, along with their other friends and comrades. The second exorcist said that if they returned like this, the cult leader would not let them go just like that. and they were left in a very difficult situation. Suddenly, the exorcists were attacked again, and this time an unknown hooded man killed one of them with a sword. No one was expecting the mysterious assassin, and they didn't even feel his energy. After a while, Yu Jae-chong said that he did not expect to find the exorcists of Hell in such a state. Although they were badly mutilated, judging by their clothes, they are the two they dropped from the battlefield. Zhongguan said that there was only one exorcist left, and they should find out if he was still alive and where he was. He also told Jin Yong that he could forget about the interrogation, to which he said that he still believed that one exorcist was still alive. Jin Yong looked around and said he could still feel his energy somewhere nearby. He knew that the Heavenly Blood Clan was behind the exorcists, and if this was true, they needed to be caught as soon as possible, capture and interrogate to find out information about the Heavenly Blood Clan. The exorcist Hell was running around the forest shouting for the mysterious assassin to show himself, because he thought he was going crazy. He demanded that he not hide but show his true face. But the assassin silently appeared behind him and insidiously stabbed him with a dagger. However, the exorcist rejected him with a magical fist, saying that for some reason today, he was faced with something that was not visible to his eyes. The assassin was playing with him, and the exorcist tried to strike at his belief because he did not even see where his opponent was. However, while the exorcist was waving his dagger, the assassin again stabbed him, this time right in the leg. The exorcist tried to fight back, but the assassin grabbed his arm and called him very clumsy. And with a single sword stroke, he separated the exorcist's hand from his body. Assassin said that now he was the only one left alive among the exorcists of Hell. However, as soon as the assassin wanted to deal a critical blow to the exorcist, he simply disappeared. Jin Young picked him up in time and carried him away while he stood there looking at the mysterious assassin. Jin Young told him that he had unfinished business with this person, so he asked him not to interfere without waiting in line. The assassin was surrounded by Jin Young's men from all sides, giving him no chance to escape. Wei Jinhong turned to the assassin and said that he seemed to be not their man at all. He added that they should analyze the situation and asked if the assassin could walk with them. But the assassin simply vanished into thin air without a word. Yu Tejong and Master Peng tried to attack the remnants of his energy, but the assassin managed to escape. Jin Young got angry and asked Selphine to find that person immediately. Selphina was outraged that she was being burdened with work again and asked Jin Young if he was making the spirits work too hard. Jin Young told her that she had no right to say such words to him after she had used up all his energy, and he ordered her to look around the neighborhood and find him. Selphina understood and agreed to help Jin Young. Using her otherworldly powers, she combed the entire forest with her eyes and found the assassin. Selphina also warned Jin Young that there are many people like that assassin around. Jin Young said it was bad enough that his friends were with him, but he asked Selphina to take him there anyway. Returning to his team, Jin Young said that he would pursue the killer and asked them to deal with the rest. Zhongguan asked Ko Jin Young to wait so that they could leave together. The assassin returned to his small group, asking if everyone was already there. The commander said he would like to receive a report on the situation of the immortal heavenly host. They began to report that 2 members of the exorcists, Hell and all the other people from the Cheongju fortress had been killed, and that 2 soldiers had been lost and 2 others wounded in the process. The commander asked if there had been any trouble with their Chokchok group, and he also praised the immortal heavenly warriors for their first combat outing. But he said that everything was not so smooth because they had a problem. They were unable to eliminate 1 exorcist, which resulted in 5 witnesses, 2 of whom he saw for the first time, and the others were Yu Taizhong, Pengyi Han, and Wei Jinhong. The commander asked if the witnesses had managed to reveal their identity and affiliation, to which the mercenaries said no, because they had neither time nor chance to do so. The commander ordered the immortal heavenly warriors to return immediately. One of the mercenaries asked if they would just leave, leaving those witnesses behind. The commander said that they would do so because they still hadn't revealed their true nature, and they were not simple opponents, so they should retreat. The mercenary reminded them that it had been 10 years since they had been locked up, and shouldn't they be allowed to play at least a little bit of freedom? Someone replied that the captain's words were true. Was the head of the group such a coward? They insisted on destroying all the witnesses and those involved in them. The commander exhaled and reminded them not to forget that only he had the right to command. And even if they make a mistake, it will cause irreparable damage to the Great Lord's reputation. Jin Young had been eavesdropping on them all along, hiding behind a wide tree trunk. Watching them, Zhongguan noticed that they looked like masters who did not want to reveal their identity. He turned to Jin Young and asked what they would do, because maybe with the help of Yu Taizhong and Master Peng, they could do something. Jin Young said that, unfortunately, his words were true, so they should get out of here and start studying the clues they had received. Zhongguan listened to Jin Young, so he also supported his idea to retreat for a while. Suddenly, Zhongguan stepped on a dry branch with his foot, which cracked at the wrong time. Jin Young realized that since it had happened, there was no other way out but to fight back together against their strange group. All they have to do is deal with all those strange people who immediately surrounded them from all sides. Jin Young and Zhang Guan ran as fast as they could to get closer to their group. The mercenaries still pursued them with their surprise attacks. Jin Young already had his magical bolt of lightning energy ready. They attacked mercenaries who appeared constantly out of the blue and in different places. After eliminating one of them, Jin Young noticed that these guys would continue to pursue them, so they should get out of there as soon as possible. Jin Young ran and thought that his body was so exhausted from endless fighting and that his internal energy was also very low. Moreover, those mercenaries persistently continue to chase them. Suddenly, out of thin air, one of the mercenaries appears in front of Jin Young with a dagger pointed directly at him. Thanks to his fighting skills, Jin Young managed to evade the attack at the last moment. However, the counterattack did not work as his opponent disappeared into thin air, and the fist that was supposed to strike the mercenary met only air. Jin Young noticed that this ability of theirs was really starting to annoy him. Suddenly, a mercenary appeared behind him, swinging his sword at Jin Young. Jin Young was about to be stabbed in the back, but Zhang Guan was quicker and repelled this vile attack. Jin Young also thanked Zhang Guan for his brave rescue. In any case, their location is difficult to detect, which is a truly amazing ability, but it is very confusing for them. They faced difficult opponents, but Jin Young and Zhang Guan skillfully repelled their attacks. The mercenary tells Jin Young that they are surprisingly holding up very well, so he asks them to keep them happy for as long as possible. Their commander decided to join the battle. As he approached, he was already energizing his sword. All he needed was one swing of his sword toward Jin Young and Zhang Guan to send them flying away. Having riveted their attention to himself, the commander ordered his soldiers to eliminate both of them immediately. The mercenary approached the commander and demanded an immediate explanation for his actions. The commander said that they have no time left for games, so mercenaries should take this matter seriously. Jin Young fought off the mercenaries' attacks and thought that he could no longer stand it. After all, in such an atmosphere, he has no choice but to take risks on his own. Cherutan told Jin Young that he couldn't destroy those guys with the rest of his magical powers. Cherutan said that he could help him with this, but this time Jin Young had to trust him completely. Jin Young didn't want to do it, but he was hesitant to trust himself to an ancient spirit, but he had no choice but to agree. Jin Young immediately turned to Zhang Guan and asked him to run immediately when he gave the sign and not to look back. Zhang Guan trusted Jin Young, so he said he didn't know what he was up to, but he would do whatever he said. Jin Young wasted no time in signaling Zhang Guan and immediately prepared to attack the mercenaries and their leadership. Jin Yan used the technique of uninterrupted hellfire bullets. The mercenaries had never even encountered such equipment, so they froze looking at the sky. However, they could not stand for long because a magical rain of fire began to fall on them directly from the sky, hitting each enemy directly on target. The commander fought off the attack and did not stand still, but Jin Young approached him, pointing his magic kula at him, saying that he was not done with him yet. Jin Young immediately took advantage of the opportunity and left the battlefield using the technique of displacement. The commander looked at what was happening around him and could not believe that such incredible power was being released from just one young man. The commander ordered his men to retreat immediately because they had to leave the battlefield. The mercenaries said that they shouldn't back down like that because they hadn't eliminated the guy yet. The commander explained that the flames had turned into a wall, completely blocking their path even if they tried to move away. The scale of the fire was too great. The mercenary reminded the commander that the other guy had heard their conversation and had also eliminated two of their allies. The commander started shouting, saying that they should have destroyed it as soon as possible from the very beginning. If they had obeyed his orders from the very beginning, this would not have happened. Now the commander did not ask, but ordered the mercenaries to quickly take the wounded and killed with them and retreat. Jin Young managed to break away from the mercenaries and their command, but his forces were running out. Jin Young told Zhang Guan that no one would pursue them until they got here. When Yung Guan saw Yu Taecheng, he was surprised and said that the old man had already come here for them. Yu Taecheng said that he came to them because the place of their meeting had changed, so he was here to inform them about it. Zhang Guan was surprised that he managed to find them in such a huge forest. Yu Taecheng said he followed his intuition, that the two of them might have come here when he heard the sound of an explosion and scorching fire. Jin Young asked Yu Taecheng if it was possible that something could have happened. Yu Taecheng said that something happened, namely, that Wei Jinhong's subordinates who survived the battle with the exorcists of Hell were eliminated. Jin Young and Zhang Guan rushed to Wei Jinhong to ask what happened. Wei Jinhong bowed his head and said that all his subordinates who survived were killed. He didn't understand how they dared to harm his soldiers in the Changji fortress, and he decided that he would find those who did it and pay them back in full. Jin Young recalled the words of a mercenary who reported on the liquidated exorcists and all the remaining people from the Qiangjie fortress. Without hesitation, Jin Young said that he had overheard a conversation between the mercenary and his allies. He also told Wei Jinhong that the person who liquidated his subordinates was an accomplice of those murderers. Wei Jinhong listened to Jin Young and asked if he had any information about the identity of those people. Jin Young pointed 2 fingers and said the names Yopsi Ran and Sangwan Tanchu, and he might have heard those 2 names before. Wei Jinhong thought about it and said the names to himself again. As for Yopsi Ran, he had heard them for the first time. However, a man named Sangwan Wei Jinhong seems to be able to find him. They were joined by Yu Taizhong, who said that if we are talking about Tan Chu, he may be the head of an organization. The name Sangwan is not so common that it is easy to find. Wei Jinhong said that there are not many organizations with the skills and courage to eliminate the Cheonzi warriors, although it will take time, but he will be able to find them. Wei Jinhong asked if Jin Young had heard anything else about them, and he replied that that was all he knew. Wei Jinhong bowed and thanked Jin Young and said he was glad he had given them the clue. In any case, Wei Jinhong had to return to the Cheongje fortress in order to interrogate that exorcist as soon as possible. He also remembered that before he left, he had promised Mr. Ko Jin Yong that he would allow him to interrogate the exorcist first. Jin Yong was very grateful for this opportunity and his courtesy. Master Peng, who held the exorcist hostage, said that it would take some time and that it might be worthwhile to entrust this matter to professionals. Jin Young told Old Pen that he shouldn't worry about it because he had some tricks in his interrogations. He approached the exorcist and told him that they were starting. Jin Young told him that everything he was about to see would be an illusion, but at the same time a reality, and ordered him to obey his orders. The exorcist was enveloped in the illusion of hypnosis, which made his eyes bulge and he could hardly move. The exorcist gave his name as Manhwa. Yu Taizhong asked Jin Young if this was a mind control technique. Jin Young explained that it is not quite right to call this technique an illusion. He does not need to know that it is actually magic created by mixing 2 types of illusion. Jin Young ordered Monhan Helm to tell him everything he knew about the Heavenly Blood Clan. Mohan Helma said that Hellhells joining the Heavenly Blood Clan was not of their own free will, but at the request of a third party. 10 years ago, after being attacked by the Master of 10,000, they went into hiding to heal their wounds and rebuild their battle order. The same person suddenly appeared in front of them in their secret place. He was wearing a golden mask, and they immediately realized that he was the leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan. His red eyes were visible through the mask, and he asked if they were Hellhell's exorcists. The clan leader explained that he had been watching their battle and felt very sorry for them when he saw their powerlessness. Yoma said to him that knowing who they were, he dared to say such nonsense. The clan leader was also getting angry, telling them that the mongrels crawling at the bottom still dared to open their mouths. Yoma, releasing his power, told the leader that today would be the day of his burial. The leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan raised his hands and said that they were very impatient. After all, the clan leader had a very tempting offer for them. He vowed that he would eliminate the master for them, but the exorcist would be his hands and feet for 10 years. He was surprised by such an unexpected offer from the leader, so he digested this information for some time. In general, he was amused by this, so he laughed and said that he must be crazy to want to be obeyed. In addition, these empty promises that they will eliminate a master of 10,000 are not for everyone. Yoma informed him that he was refusing his offer, so now the leader would have to pay with his life for the humiliation of his people. The leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan was sorry that even in such a situation, they could not see the benefit. Releasing his energy, the clan leader said that they did not have the guts and intelligence to defeat anyone. The leader of the clan told the exorcists that he would make them understand everything by the example of his power. After a while, Yoma knelt exhaustedly before the leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan. Yoma looked at the red eyes that flashed with fire, realizing that he was looking at a monster, not a man. The leader was approaching Yoma, saying that with their skills they could not do anything. Now they would have to do whatever the clan leader told them to do. In this case, he will help the exorcists eliminate the Master of 10,000, and thus the whole world will know about them. The leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan wondered what decision they would make after their short negotiations. Yomi had no choice but to obey the leader and agree. The leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan threw Yomi a very strange ball. It was a pill that could increase internal energy. The clan leader ordered them to return to the residence and gather strength there until his clan contacted them. So they could obtain power according to the letter sent by the Heavenly Blood Clan. They went out to attack Master Yu Tae-chong. Mohan Helma warned them that the leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan was a very dangerous man. After all, his power is similar to the martial art of Jin Yong, but it differs in that it is enveloped in fear. This is the kind of skill that can never be forgotten. When the clan leader waved his hands, it seemed as if a demon was jumping out of them, as if a bloody red devilish dragon was about to attack. Master Peng said that a similar case concerning the Hell exorcists had to some extent come to an end, so they needed to go to the Ho family. The danger from the Heavenly Blood Clan was also something he couldn't ignore, and Master Peng would like to help them in this matter. Master Peng looked at the stone and said that the Peng family had more pressing matters to attend to. Yu Tejong asked Master Peng if his obsession with stones was related to his granddaughter's illness. Master Peng replied that this was not the way to say that his granddaughter was a healthy child. However, a very rare disease developed in her already weak body, so she was given a short time to live, and her condition was constantly deteriorating, regardless of the medication she was taking. So, as a last resort, they asked the Ho family about this service, but it did not turn out well. That's why Master Peng decided to personally go to Ho and find out the answers, but he can't just leave it all behind and go home. Wei Jinhong understood the old master, so he said that he would take the exorcist and go to the fortress. Master Peng now decided to turn to young Ko Jin-young. After all, I was very grateful to him for the information that would help me in my search for the truth. Master Peng also told Jin-young that if fate would have it, they would meet again. When Master Peng and Wei Jinhong left, Jin-young asked Yu Tai-chon what he planned to do next. Yu Tai-jong replied that he was going to accompany them on their journey. Jin-young was not expecting such a response, so he was visibly nervous, not understanding his motives. But Yu Tai-jong just patted Jin-young on the shoulder and said that he had his own reasons for doing so. Jin-young looked at Yu Tai-cheon's trail and thought about what. Could it be because of what happened on the battlefield? Jin-young still shivered at the memory of that bloody fight. After all, the endless thirst for blood and the mockery of the feeling of that power is still inside him and is not going to go away. Anyone would have felt such an ominous force up close. So it would have been strange if the Master of 10,000 had not awakened an interest. Yu Tai-chon will accompany them on their travels to make sure that his power does not bring evil to this world. If something happens, he will not hesitate to eliminate it. Yu Tai-jong told Jin-young that they should first go to Jeonju because he had to meet someone at the House of the Winds. Meanwhile, a high-ranking man asked how 4 of the heavenly warriors were killed and 2 others were injured. One person from the Chokchok group was killed, and others were seriously injured, all at the hands of one person. The commander bowed his head even lower and said that there was another accomplice. A high-ranking man asked how many people it would take to break into a place where there were 8 immortal celestial warriors and 5 Chokchok people. 3 were killed, and 2 were seriously injured. Under this calculation, at least 10 people had to attack. The commander thought that it was not 10 people or just one master of 10,000. The commander told his master that he would never allow this to happen. A high-ranking man told him that if he had been more responsible, he would not have allowed so many victims and the young man would not have escaped. The high-ranking man looked very angrily at the commander, asking if he understood what he was talking about. He shouted that the young man had escaped from a place from which only a master of 10,000 could escape, and all because of the pride of the detachment commander, who was now silent. The high-ranking man demanded an excuse from the commander. The commander exhaled and said that he had fully realized his mistake. A high-ranking man said that they could not leave that young man walking around the world, and that it was unacceptable for information to leak out. This time, the commander must engage in combat and eliminate it himself. In addition, the commander could not count on replenishment in the unit. The commander realized that this meant only one thing. Either he would destroy Jin-young or he would destroy him. After all, there is no way to refuse the master and no choice but to fulfill his order. The commander swore to a high-ranking man that he would eliminate Jin-young. After a while, Yu Tai-jong told his fellow travelers that they had arrived. They arrived at the Wind House on some important business of Yu Tai-chon. Yu Tai-jong invited Jin-young and Zhongguan to go inside. But suddenly a girl appeared in front of them and ordered them to stop immediately. The girl waved her sword in front of them in a less than hospitable manner. Jin-young could not understand what was happening because of the sharp wind. The girl told Jin-young that he emanated a terrible aura, a terrible energy similar to demonic energy. That's why a dangerous person like Jin-young can't go inside. So she began to defend her possessions from such an evil demon as him. She looked at Jin-young with crazy eyes, ordering him not to even go in that direction. She started attacking Jin-young too aggressively, charging her sword with her energy. Their struggle continued. Jin-young was not used to fighting women, so he did not dare to attack, but only held the line. During the battle, Jin-young tried to explain to her that there was a misunderstanding because they did not come here to harm her. Jin-young pointed to the stairs and said that under the leadership of Yu Tai-jong, they had come here to meet someone. The girl stood her ground, saying that she would never believe a person with a dark inner force. Cheritan noticed that no amount of talking can affect her, so Jin-young has no choice. All that remains is to calm her down with what she calls dark energy.